this is another thing that's a little bit irritating about the AI art conversation is artists want to come out.
This is like a this is what
Stop.
you
No, we're not even in Wittgenstein. It has nothing to do with that. Stop. Any definition that you try to give, anybody can challenge it, and you'll never be able to defend it. You will never be able. Okay, there's like a guy that walks around. He looks and talks and acts like a human or whatever, but he's not sure if he's a human because he doesn't have like memories. He doesn't know if he ever existed as a human, and he was made into a robot or something like that, basically, right? But the question is like, well, what makes him human? What is human?
So what do you know about like what's going on with like AI and art right now?
You know, I kind of stand in the periphery and I just know everything because that's just my job. So yeah, what do you want me to say?
No, I was just curious if you had like formed an opinion going into this or not, whether
my opinion is that some kind of artist is probably always going to exist in the future. That might just mean literally people that know how to create art for AI things to duplicate. And there might be some very novel forms of art that some artists will still be required to create. My thing is that like once certain technology is kind of like out of the bag, it's never going back in.
Exactly.
Yeah. So AI artists need to, if you're smart, instead of fighting against the rising tide of what will become probably a wave of AI art, you probably need to start figuring out what is your business model going to look like in a post-AI art world.
Yeah, I feel like AI as a technology is really, really cool, and I feel like it can be really, really helpful for artists. I feel like we already have some art-based tools that use AI, like content-aware things in Photoshop, things like that. Those are all like AI-based kind of things, and I hope that
while that's
AI
true,
art,
just to qualify, while that's true, nobody's using content-aware to like do like creative pieces.
Create entire paintings.
Right,
yeah, and I think that's the problem that a lot of artists have with it. I think there's like this huge division. The two main sides are people being like, get fucked, artists, get a real job. Today I saw that some people were calling people art cells or draw cells, which is really funny to me.
Draw cells. That's legendary. Okay.
Yeah. And then there's the other side that's kind of the other pole is artists being like, all AI art is bad and it's terrible, which I also don't agree with. I think that AI can be like a super useful tool for like doing concept work and things like that, and generating things that like, I feel like it's like a more functional Google image search basically.
Mm-hmm.
But because I feel like it's a more functional Google image search, I don't really want to qualify the final product of that as art unless a human also touches it. And that's been a hugely debated thing. People are basically like, people are like, oh, artists don't think AI art is real because it's like faster and easier, and I completely disagree with that characterization of stuff. But now there are people calling themselves like prompt artists and prompt engineers, which is like
is that like people that know like how to prompt the AI things in order to get certain things out of them?
Yeah.
My favorite thing to do, I'm so sorry if you've ever had someone do this to you and trigger the fuck out of you, but my favorite thing to do is whenever people post art on Twitter now, the best response is to say like, oh my god, that's like such a great piece, like what prompt did you use? It triggers the fuck out of people.
Yeah, I was gonna talk about that as like one of the things that's like kind of been irritating as that they're like artists. There was somebody who got banned. There's an artist who got banned from a subreddit the other day.
I saw
Although
that.
the mod who did that banning was like really stupid, absolutely stupid. It did not look like AI art, and that was kind of ridiculous. But there are a lot of people being like, "Oh no, you didn't paint this," or "Oh, this isn't a photo. You used AI to do this," and that's kind of irritating. So there are like a bunch of like small unforeseen consequences like that have been popping up and are interesting. But the main thing that I wanted to talk about is there are a bunch of people who are like, this is fine, this is moral, this is legal, that means it's great, and we should all be creating AI art, and artists can just suck it if they think it's unethical. But the issue is that all of the major services that do generate AI art were all using a database that was meant for research purposes, and so they didn't differentiate between copyrighted works and non-copyrighted works. So
yeah, I've heard this argument. I think of all the arguments related to AI art, this is literally the least compelling one to me. I think the copyright argument, I think it's super ridiculous.
Why?
What I would need to know is
that people just took people's art and are now generating a profit from it without like.
Yeah, the argument that would have to be made to me is what is meaningfully different from a computer copying AI art for inspiration versus a human copying art for inspiration, because humans train off of copyrighted things. Go ahead.
Okay, that's a huge that's one of the main discussions I've been having recently. And okay, people are like, oh, AI learns the same way humans do. Absolutely not. AI learns by like, basically, this is going to be a super hyper oversimplification of it. When a human learns how to draw like a figure, they're like, okay, normally people have a head, 2 arms. Generally they have 2 arms and 10 fingers. Da 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 da.
Mhm.
AI goes, normally when people describe an image this way, this is what it looks like. And normally an image like this, there are like hands on a figure. And normally where there are hands, there are fingers. And normally where there's a finger, usually there's another finger next to it. And that's why you end up with like all these weird ass like 10-fingered AI things, because it's basically just structured on, when you see this thing with this description, this is how it looks.
Sure.
And so that's very different from how humans learn. And number two, even if it did learn in the same way humans did, basically it's not generating art in the same way a human would. Because like, basically, okay, so do you think photocopiers are artists? Do they create art?
A photocopier? No.
Yeah. Okay. And why is that? It's because it's just reproducing.
Yeah, you're
something that
literally
is-
reproducing the same thing. Hmm.
Yeah, that's all AI art is doing, just on a large scale. It's not.
Yeah, but
what
I would
makes
argue
humans
that that's
different
essentially what humans do.
No, not at all. So humans, whenever they draw something, it's going to be filtered not through just what references that they're using and what they've learned from. It's going to be filtered through their own personal tastes, their muscle memory, their preferences, how they see the world.
So if you
things
want,
like
we can
that.
start listing these things out one at a time, but I think every single one of these things will apply to any
To AI?
sufficiently complicated AI. Yeah. So when you say,
Absolutely not. Well, eventually, I do think.
well,
that
do you want to go
AI
through
was
before we
sentient.
hop from topic? Do
Yeah.
you want to go through each of those things one at a time? And I think you can draw
Sure,
like a direct
yeah.
parallel to how. Yeah. So what is the difference you think between what an AI draws from versus what a human intelligence draws from?
I think a human intelligence draws from like basically their whole life experience contributes to how they're going to draw something.
Yeah.
Essentially.
So I mean, AIs have shorter lifespans, but I mean they could be accelerated. They could be
But they're only
accelerated.
referencing other images. They're
Yeah,
not
but
referencing.
Can a blind
anything
person?
beyond that.
Could a blind person draw something?
Yeah,
No.
but they'd be using.
Wait.
What are you talking about? There's blind artists.
No. I mean a real blind person, not like my vision is 1075 in my late life or whatever. An actual blind person, they could like maybe move their hands on a piece of paper and do something like
Yeah,
cute,
and
but
they
they're
can
not drawing
sculpt things
anything.
as well.
They're not drawing anything meaningful because they have no references to draw
True.
from, right?
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
But-
So humans reference images that they know, the
Yes.
same way I would say any sufficiently complex AI that's capturing images it knows.
So then I would posit that this AI, none of the current AI are sufficiently complicated enough to reference the images in the same way humans do, because they're only referencing from other art, not from like all the visual input humans get their whole entire life.
Yeah, but I mean, like, hold on, I'm just writing these down. So I don't believe that you believe that argument, and I'll say this. So your argument is that humans aren't just referencing art, they're also referencing all of the data input they've had throughout their entire life. If I were to show you an
absolutely.
AI and train it on a data set, but I were also to add a data set of here is 40 years of lived human life, and then I were to feed it that data, you probably wouldn't say that, okay, now it's okay, right? You'd say, okay, well, hold on, it's something different. That'd be my guess, or you can address that argument.
I do think that if AI was sentient, if we got to a point where AI was sentient, I would consider what it would generate art, but currently it's not.
Well, do we need sentience for art generation here? I don't know. Well, because now we've moved on to
I
something
think-
way different, but yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think what art is generally is it's something filtered through a human and then created. That's why
Well-
we don't like. That's why like copiers, we don't really trust. We don't say photocopiers are art. You know?
Well, I think that, well, no, that fails on 2 points. Because a photocopier can be somebody that is filtered through a human. A literally person goes in and photocopies something that's from a
But
human.
the photocopier isn't the artist. We don't consider that the artist.
Yeah, but we wouldn't consider the artist using a photocopier an artist either, right? If they weren't modifying the image, right?
Yeah, no. But a photocopier reproducing like actual art that we consider art, even though it's producing art, we don't consider it the artist.
When you say, I'm sorry, hold on, let me get my head straight. When you say photocopier, are you referring to the machine or the person?
The machine.
Oh,
I refer to
I'm
the
sorry.
person.
I thought photocopier, like a person that's going to photocopy. Okay, you're
Oh,
right.
no.
Yeah, a photocopier, the actual thing, yeah, is we probably wouldn't consider an artist, sure.
Yeah.
But that's because it's literally just copy pasting an image one to one, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically AI is just doing that on a really sufficiently complex, granular, large scale.
But
Essentially.
I would
It's
argue
not
that that's
filtering.
isn't that how humans learn art though?
No, it's different. Well, no, not at all. Like I said, humans don't just learn art by being like, hey, normally when I see this, this is next to it. You learn things like cast light does this. You learn bodies have these muscles and bones in them. You learn that certain colors punch up other colors, that like gray can look like a different color next to other things. AI is just like taking what it's seen and learning none of the depth behind it.
I disagree, but I don't have the art background. I can tell you that for music, this is exactly how music is learned. When you become a really good
music is way more mathematical, and that makes
no,
sense.
No. It's not mathematical. If you're a really good musician, one of the things you'll do, at least for jazz, is you will get recordings of old jazz players. You will go into a practice room and you will transcribe their solo. You will be able to learn how to play every single note exactly as they play it. And for really cool licks, you might learn those exact same licks in literally all 12 keys. You'll learn exactly the songs, you'll be able to play it from memory, and then you'll learn certain licks in all of the keys so you can apply them wherever. And then when you go to solo in your own performances, what you're doing is you're taking an amalgamation of all of the transcriptions and all the things you've learned, and then you're applying that to create like new pieces. And that's where like the quote unquote human innovation comes from. But that innovation...
But it's not just, I feel like I disagree with that. I feel like it's not just the stuff that you've copied from other artists. It's probably songs that you've heard too, but haven't taken the time to like learn and copy down, but those have influenced your taste.
Yeah, they do, but I'm just saying that at the end of the day, the music that you're generating as a person is a sophisticated combination of all of the things that have influenced you up to that point, essentially.
That's exactly what I'm saying about art.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that if you feed all of this information into a machine, if it's sufficiently complicated, that process will be the same for a machine as it would be for a person.
Yeah, and what I'm saying is we're not at that stage yet. They're only doing like copying the sheet music, essentially. They're not feeding any other...
Well, but they're not copying the sheet music. They're making new, innovative pieces of art.
No, they're not. They're cutting up pieces of the sheet music, piecing them together.
No, that's just not true.
Absolutely. That's literally how it works.
I can show you pieces of AI art that have never been drawn before. You might be able to figure out where some people, but
you're taking components and pieces. They wouldn't be able to be generated without the database of art that already exists.
Yeah, but that's true for humans as well. Just look at something as complicated as a movie. When we say
humans aren't just taking directly from those things and then like applying that to a new thing.
They literally are.
I bet No, they're not. They're filtering it through their own experiences, which is a huge facet of I think what makes it art versus just a generative thing.
I don't have the background in art, and I'm going to say even without that background, I guarantee you that you can go through paintings of artists and see verbatim like, oh, this thing was like lifted exact. Because I know what happens in film. The Akira slide on like a motorcycle, that like shot has been copied. There's a lot of things from Jackie Chan and Bruce Lee that get copied.
Absolutely.
Like the shots get copied verbatim. Not even like
something.
Yeah.
Wait. But to copy something one to one, that usually takes like a lot of either inherent skill in that same category or in that arena of whatever they're illustrating. Like if it's like, I don't know, like faces, then being good at portrait work. Or if it's like anime, understanding anime. If you're directly trying to copy them out, this is something that they teach in art school. You reproduce master artists' work and stuff like that. To get it to be exactly that usually takes effort, and you have to learn how to do it. And during that process, like you're integrating those things into your own skill set. You're not just like, okay, here's this, I'm gonna copy that. Just like you were talking about the music. It's not just copying a thing wholesale. And if it is exactly the same, it's usually because it took a lot of learning and effort to get it exactly the same. And there are also
when you reference the learning and effort thing, that feels like it's going into the argument of like, I don't like that AI has learned so quickly. Like I understand it takes human learning and effort to do it.
I don't care about how fast it is or how slow it is. I think that there is a process to it, and that process is necessary to like filter it through a person's, the way they see the world, the way they've taken in data all their life, and the way they're expressing that data, I think is vastly different from how a machine does it, basically.
Okay. I don't believe it's meaningfully different, but I don't know if... it feels like the same process to me. I feel like we make human learning sound more complicated than I think it actually is. Where I think a lot of human learning is literally you go by reference. Once you've built up a sufficient database of reference inside of your own mind, you might be able to tweak some things differently or combine things in innovative ways, and that's kind of where new art comes from. It's not like a genuinely inspired, like here's a brand new thing process. It's by
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But basically, if that was the case, then if like 3 people all learned from the same references, do you think they would all create exactly the same thing?
Exactly the same thing? No, I don't think so.
And why not?
Well, because they don't have the exact same references. They're gonna have like different lives, and so they've probably seen different things. Yeah, but I mean, the exact same thing could be said for AI. I could feed it a different like.
No, because the AI is not being fed like experiences. Like it's literally just being fed art and photos and things like that. It's not being fed like, oh, hey, I like sunsets, or I really like something.
Yeah,
like,
but these are all like things that you could like toggle for the AI, right? You could feed it more pictures of sunsets if you want. Like the only difference between those three.
But nobody has.
But if they did, you probably still wouldn't be okay with it.
No, I think if it got to the point where AI, like I said, if AI was sentient, it had its own distinctive
well, hold on. Now
and
sentient is
that it filtered those things through.
When you say is a sentient, you're adding a whole other thing that's not related to this, right?
I feel like, I feel like it is deeply related to it because I feel like, okay, maybe not. Maybe, I guess it's how you define sentience. Can something have experiences and have opinions and preferences on something without being sentient?
Can something have a preference without being sentient? Well, we're going to get it really hardcore into like how do we define preference is going to be difficult.
Yeah, I was wondering.
But I'm just saying that like if you took three humans and you put all of them next to each other and you asked them to like generate art, the only difference is going to be the references they've seen in their life, and I guess some biological differences. But like assuming that if you took
those
three
references and experiences,
but
I think
if,
that's what makes it that.
But if you took three humans that were all genetically the exact same, and you gave them the exact same lives, and then you had all three of them start to produce art, that art would be exactly the same 100%. There'd be no difference.
Yeah, but that's just because of that's still art because it's still being processed through them. It's just incidental that it's different.
No, I'd say it wouldn't be different. It'd be the same. But then I'd say for
it's just incidental that it's not different.
Yeah, but then I'd say for the ML data sets, all we would need to do is feed it like different data from another ML thing, and then we would get different art. But it would be the same thing as a human society. You're just giving it a different data set to go by.
I don't think so because I don't think that we can give sufficiently like complex enough data sets that could be the equivalent of like human preferences and how those preferences impact how humans generate art.
It's not going to be the equivalent, but now we've entered like a weird tautological world where it's like, well, the only thing that's art is stuff that has human preferences. In which case, if that's how you define art, well, of course I'm going to agree with you because you've defined it as such with human preferences.
That's how most people define art.
Well, but then this whole conversation is.
That's why we don't.
But then the whole conversation is meaningless.
Right.
Destiny.
If you define, wait, hold on, stop. Oh God, before this gets into some weird philosophical ways. But I'm just going to say real quick, if you define art as like art is a thing that has come from human preferences, well then by definition, AI art will never be art because it can't come from human preferences, right?
I think that's why I feel like maybe I should budge a little bit on whether it's from a human. I do think maybe from someone sentient, I guess.
Yes, someone who has intentions about the world and has a type of rationality that machines and animals don't have. Like, remember that discussion you had with Vegan Gains?
No.
About the difference between animals and humans?
Yeah, but this doesn't work because, while we might be able to measure like a lack of certain types of sentiences in animals, there's no reason to think that we couldn't create that in a machine. But I don't know if we would know if the machine...
Yeah, 100%. I agree that if we create, like, if we have advanced enough general... AI that is capable of having like the concepts of like truth and falsity and whatnot, who like just has what we would call sentience, or maybe sapience would be the more technical term. Then I think that would be considered art. Like, you know, if it functions exactly like us in all ways. I mean, that's all that's really required for us to ascribe.
Sure, if that's how you want. I don't think that
any agency to make art.
Yeah, I understand. I don't think anybody on the planet defines art by like as long as it comes from a sapient creature with intentionality. But I mean, if you want to define it that way, then by definition, AIs can't create art for sure.
Yeah, I kind of feel like that is mostly how people define it because if you take the broad range of art and you look at like naive art that's literally just kind of like intentionally made to be kind of like not sophisticated and things like that, or abstract art that's like there's like Rothkos that are literally just like a big giant square of red, and it's like that's super simple, but it's still considered art for a reason. It's
because it was made with intention.
Well,
exactly.
when you say hold on, oh God, we're about to get into the levels of pedantry that we're not even ready for.
Well, I have to go soon. I just want to drop by and try to amend the definition from human to like general sapient,
Yeah.
rational creature with
Sure,
intention.
we can amend the definition,
I
but
can
like
agree with
that's
that, yeah.
literally what we're arguing over, right? So amending a definition, like if you want to like define something as like 1 = 1, then I'm going to agree, of course.
Of course, but it's all a question of semantics about like how do you define art?
Wait,
like,
no,
that
hold
varies
on.
depending on-
It's not just semantics. It's material. It's important, right? Do you have to be human to create art, or what is a creation of art? And you can't say like, well, if we define
This
art as
depends
things
on
that are
how you define art.
well, but that's boring. we're
not
not
all.
look.
Of course,
Sorry,
but that's
No,
why
no,
you
no, no,
already
no, no, no.
said
Hold on.
why.
When I say it's boring, what I mean is it's not interesting to say, well, how do I define art? I define art as something created by a human. Oh, okay. Well, then I guess AIs can't create art. That's not an interesting conversation. You're not saying anything of meaning there, right? With the deeper
But
question.
that's like say.
No.
like-
Stop. The actual question that's being asked is why does something need to be created by a human to be art? That's the question.
Well, yes, exactly. But then you just have the general conversation about the difference between a mere animal or like, you know, a non-thinking thing versus a rational animal, and that's fine to have.
But these things are,
again,
but these are unintuitive things because animals don't typically create art at the sophistication of an AI that's been trained on human data sets. That's the problem. When humans look at art created by
But
an
you can
animal,
also say the same thing.
wait, hold on.
about,
Let me
like-
finish. Wait, hold on.
Sorry, go ahead,
When humans look at art created by an animal, right? We'll look at something. We'll go, "Wow, the peacock's feathers are nice," or "That's like a nice nest." But intuitively, we don't have to do like a big cognitive process to figure out why it's not real art. Intuitively, we just know, oh, look at how simplistic it is. It's made by a dumb animal. But if you get an AI that's creating sophisticated fictional scenes in like neo-realist, surrealist painting styles of like science fiction things, it's much harder to look at that and go like, oh, well, that's definitely not art, right? I think that's a much more difficult thing for people to intuitively grasp. So yeah, it demands further
I think
analysis.
I can agree with that, but I think once people understand that it's not like something that from like artistic reserves the same way a person would, and that it's more just taking little bits of what it's learned like a copy machine, I feel like people understand that more.
No, but
Destiny,
It's not.
if you were to
Oh,
find
God.
out that like there's this example to ask this exact question, which is like if you found out that you know a bunch of monkeys on typewriters had accidentally just by pure that tiny little chance that could possibly happen, right? You know, Shakespeare's Hamlet, would you consider that art or not? I mean, I am inclined to say no, in which case we are talking about art 1 and art 2.
sure.
Right?
And if you,
Why
wait,
is
wait,
it-
if you want to answer that question that way, that's fine. But that's going to be a hotly debated question, right? This is another thing that's a little bit irritating about the AI art conversation is artists want to come out.
This is like a this is what
Stop!
you
No!
mean by
We're not
language
even a
being
Victor sign. It has
simpler.
nothing to do with that. Stop. People want to come out in the people want to
What
come
he
out.
means by it.
People want to come out in the art community and go, oh no. This is not real art. This is art. When that's not even a settled question in the art community. What is art has been contentious since the first caveman drawing ever, right? The idea
I do
of
agree
what
with
is
that.
art
I
is
think
incredibly
that's-
contentious.
Art is a
about it.
word that
But-
it has different connotations, and it's gonna
Yeah.
mean something different at different. Like for example, like this crumb on my desk could be considered art if I grew up in a society where that thing was seen to
No,
be
don't
like
be
something so
retarded.
perfect and what the fuck are you talking about?
The whole point of art and
For
everything
one thing,
is for,
you're just being. I'm just gonna.
So-
mute
so the
it.
crumb on
This
your
is not
desk,
working.
that's
I
not at
muted
all?
it. So it could be considered.
Wait, hold on.
like
We
a
can't
social
mute people in the
concern,
call.
right?
This shit turns into a cluster. We can't do
Well, I
that.
mean, he called
no,
me,
you
he called
can't
me a
just sit
retard
here
'cause
and
he's an
pretend like
asshole,
something that's
and,
not art at all
I mean,
and just
he's not
pedantic.
worth even-
I'm just saying.
I
Just real quick.
I mean, if you
You're just changing the definition because it's convenient for you. You can't just choose something that's arbitrary and say in another society, well, this is entirely arbitrary and I could define this as art. When we're talking about art, we're talking about things that people enjoy, like books or film, or things like identifications for different companies. You can't just say, oh, it's a crumb, we can change it. All that matters is what it's used for and if AI can replace what humans are doing.
I think what it's used for, but also the intent with which it was created, like expressing creativity in some way or having a desire.
Okay,
to
so if the
create.
intent is to represent your company, is that art? So like I get a logo?
Well, also, I think that question, because I wouldn't attack that, but I would say,
branding design.
I think that's part of an interesting question is, does the intention of the artist matter, right? But again,
I think it does.
yeah, that's great if you think it does, but there are some people that would argue really strongly on both sides of that, right? I think the intention of an artist could flush.
Counter argument to that.
The counter argument is death of the artist. The intention of the artist is completely and totally irrelevant. It doesn't matter. If your grandmother gave you a quilt and she put a random assortment of letters on it that spelt the N-word and that meant something important to you, and you decided to put that in your car, and people like saw you driving around with the N-word in your car, and you're like, what the fuck? And you're like, oh no, the intention is like really pure. This is something my grandma did. Most people aren't going to care.
Oh, no. I mean, in terms of like whether the intention is moral or not, just whether or not She chose those specific squares for a reason to make a specific piece. I think making intentional choices in art is what makes it art.
Well, but aren't we challenged
Okay.
by forms of like random art where the people will do like the splatter paintings or the bucket over a thing? Like,
Yeah,
isn't
and
that
they're making the choice to do those. Yeah,
Yeah, but isn't the
That's
challenge
AI is
of
making the choice too.
isn't the
no,
cha-
it's not. Is the thing. It has no context
How is it not
for
making
making
a
any
choice?
choice.
Yes, it
It's
does. It has
literally-
context. It has
No, it
lots of
only has-
experience.
No, it only has the images that it's seen. It doesn't have the context of
Wait,
any preferences or lived experience
Yes,
or
it
like,
does.
oh, so this is like, no, it doesn't. It doesn't.
it does have preferences. Its weightings have preferences, and when it draws images, it can go back and it can
So
adjust
that's made
things
by,
because it
okay,
doesn't
so
need
actually
it.
this dovetails into like a side topic. So generative art, I think, is really, really cool. And I think that's totally valid as art. But that's because humans are specifically like doing the programs to make it generate the thing. If every AI artist was like programming their own AI to generate art, I'd feel a little bit more like, oh yeah, you can call yourself an artist because you've created this thing to do this thing. But as it is,
Wait.
people are just using a
Wait.
tool that somebody else
So-
made to do
Wait,
it.
the tool
so they're
itself
not
can
hold on.
really-
self-create.
I don't feel bad interrupting now because I was waiting and then you fuckers jumped in.
Good. Get in there, like in.
Do you think? So you said if they built their own programs.
Yeah.
So
generative work is
okay, do you
generative
think
art is
that-
really fucking cool. Yeah.
do you think?
So wait,
that,
you think if
Hold on,
somebody-
Hey, let
please
Lycan
vote.
finish his shit. Oh my God, go, Lycan.
Do you think that Steven Spielberg is an artist? Do you think directors are artists?
In some way, yeah, but not in the same way that like.
Because at the end of the
I
day,
guess it
they're
depends
taking
in terms of context. Yes.
they're taking, like, they tell someone what the image is supposed to look like when they have a
Yeah.
graphics artist making stuff. They are bringing people on that have a certain look, that are giving the certain aesthetic they want. They find
Yeah.
the right sceneries and all that. An AI is very often taking these images that it's already consumed and that it's processed and it's putting them there.
Yeah.
People are telling the AI, I want it to look like this, but it's simply the camera capturing the image, putting it all together
So,
as if they
I would
had
say
all
that-
those components.
So I would say that the difference there's a few differences. That all the people underneath him are humans that are generating like the art that is eventually produced. I guess it's just like more like a team project. And also he has like a direct say during the process. It's not just, hey, I want this movie. Oh, man, cool. He
But the
like
final product
changes
is
and modifies
still-
things as it goes. But I think that process where you're like taking a direct hand in terms of the creation and modifying the how it turns out, I think that's what makes the difference between like literally a photocopier and then a human. It goes through a modification process.
Can I
Well,
toss
now-
something
now
in
it
here
seems
real
like you're
quick? And then
arguing.
you guys can also tango this. I'll let you two talk about it. Do you consider like photographers artists? Because aren't they just
Yeah.
copying what they're seeing?
Because they're taking they're taking photos with intention.
Wait, so the intention
they're
part, what
taking-
if somebody just traces? What if somebody photocopies with intention?
I don't know. There are like collage artists, and I would say that collage artists.
No. Somebody that just
like,
traces.
they-
I'm watching DBZ and I trace Gohan because I feel strongly about it. Am I an artist there if I
So
trace it?
tracing, I would say no. Yeah, you're an artist if you trace. That's how a lot of artists learn. But even a tracing, you're still using your muscle memory. You're still using, like, it's still going to be at least mildly filtered through a person, and I think that that's important.
There's still a person that is directing the AI.
Yes. True, but okay, somebody who uses Google image search, an artist.
Well, no, hold on. So it sounds like you're now making it's not that human interaction, because I just pointed that like there's a very similar aspect of human interaction between a director in a movie and someone using
but I
this
did
AI
say that-
generator. But now you're like saying it has to be certain levels of complex interaction.
I would say if you so I get that part this is a part where it does get sticky. I completely concur with that. But I do think that there's a distinct difference between I really feel like AI art is more like somebody going to Google image search and being like, hey, I want this, rather than a director being like, hey, this is the result we're going for. This is how we're going to do it. Oh, are we achieving that? Okay, let's adjust in this way. Let's do this. Let's do that.
So it's complexity, because at the end of the day, I Google an image search, I'm getting a pre-created image that someone's just posted on the internet. If I go to an AI machine,
essentially.
I get to go in and I get to give very specific ideas of what I want to be generated and
I mean, you
outcomes
can
the
give
art.
specific ideas on Google image search too.
Right, but again, nothing new is being created from it. Something new is
Yeah,
being created when I
nothing-
spit out an
so-
AI art.
This is interesting because I feel like there is a debate to be had whether like it's creating
Well,
anything
again,
new when everything is
you say
copied,
new,
and
but
it
then I'm going to
is,
point
but
to the.
yeah.
I'm going to then point to if you're like, yeah, but it's new, but it's concepts and ideas that have been absorbed and conceptualized. And I'm like, yeah, sure, but that actor is being reused in movie after movie after movie. That
True, but again,
background
it's
is
filtered
being
through his
used.
experience. It's different each time.
But the AI art's different each time.
No, it's not in the same way that a human's work would be.
Wait, why wouldn't
It like literally can't be different in the same way because it's still just drawing on the same pool of experience that it has.
No, it's not. It can learn based off of every new piece of art that it generates. It can learn off of new
true,
art
but
that you
that's
give it. It can learn
still-
off of more training time.
Yes, but that's still just the art. It's not filtering any like. It's still not going to be filtered through the same, like I said, preferences, muscle memory, learning experiences. It is not
But
going to.
you
be...
can give it preferences. You can just have another discriminator
But that's
that
just weight
says,
in
"Is
the
this good
code.
enough?"
That's not. That's like not inherent. Kind of like something that will modify it in the way that humans.
What do
like,
you mean?
What do you mean?
Will it not
What do you
Wait,
mean?
can I ask a question real quick?
Be...
In reliance to this intention and everything, what do you consider about classical musicians that try to emulate and like copy exactly classical music from the past? So you get like a whole orchestra, everybody's learning to play their instruments exactly as they were played in the past. Everybody's trying to play exactly the same. The pianists are trying to play exactly the same. Are these people artists? Are they
neat.
creating art if they're just like copying?
I think again, it's like there's a reason why there's some like pianists and violinists who are more lauded than others because it's how the specific person plays it
Well,
that makes it
no, because I
an
think some,
experience to see.
yeah, but if they're trying to play it just exactly as the past, they want to duplicate a
Yeah.
past performance essentially. How is this different than like an audible photocopier?
I think because it took, like I was saying before about people who can do like photographic reproductions of art, it's going to take like to get that level of exactitude, like kind of specific exactness, like that
Yep.
level. It's going to take a lot of deviation from just like how they do it. It's going to have to be still be filtered, and they'll have to like constrain and control those filterings to get to that.
So
And I
is
don't
it just
think
then the
most people
difficulty part of it? That's what now makes it sound like it's just about how
No.
difficult it is.
No, it's not at all about how difficult it is. Because there's certain art that I can like I could emulate a Rothko in like 2 seconds, but it wouldn't really be kind of like to actually learn more about that. I would need to like know more. But the actual creation of a Rothko, just painting like a red thing, the difficulty of that is small. Do you see? That makes sense.
Kind of.
David, I have a question for you.
Jesus. I do consider AI artists terrorists. Yes.
What is an art in your mind?
I don't know. I've done enough music
So is
school,
everything
and I've
art
done.
under your
I have
definition?
no
Like,
definition for art.
Is a car crash art?
I have no definition for art because any
Is me
definition that you try to
walking down the
give,
street
anybody can challenge it,
drinking
and you'll
coffee?
never be able to defend it. You will never
there
be
have to
able.
be-
You'll never be able to
I think
defend it
that
because it's a definition of art. I'm telling you that. There's no
I
shot.
think that there might be AI art that definitely qualifies as art, but doesn't there have to be some intentionality or like a modicum of some intentionality, whether it's from the viewer or from the person who makes it? Otherwise, literally everything is art. And there's no
If you want to argue that, it's
Yeah.
fine. But like the whole, I'm pretty sure during like the 70s and 80s, and I'm sure there's been tons of periods in history. I know that for music, it was people like John Cage. It was atonal artists like Schoenberg. Like people are challenging the concept of what is music constantly. When it comes to art, who was the guy that put the toilet in the art museum?
But what's consistent? The consistency is the only consistent thing is that someone wants it to be perceived as it. And the other, or that someone is perceiving it that way and they're intending for it to be perceived that way, either at the time of creation or at the time of enjoyment. But literally,
intent
that's
and
the
then
only
the creation.
consistent.
Yeah.
That's the only consistent thing you have. Otherwise, like I said, me walking to get coffee is art.
Sure. I mean, you can argue then that, but then at the end of the day, what you're essentially arguing then is that art just needs to have human input, or what?
I think so.
Have
I think
human
so.
creativity,
Yeah.
yeah, I think so.
But,
So wait, if you
Or
have
not
10
human,
images,
but sentient. Like I said, sentient input.
if you have
I think
10 AI
sentience is
generated images
absolutely
and you pick up
is
one.
pivotal. What's that?
If you
What?
generate 10 AI images and then pick one to put on the cover of your book, is that now art?
I think so. I even think that I even think
I
that
disagree on this point. I feel
I think
like
that
you need to
curating
modify
something could be
AI
art
to-
if you intend it. Like, let's say that you make a playlist of, I don't know, the best playlist for whatever workout you're doing. I think that if you're intending for that to be an artistic endeavor, and
Yeah, there's
people,
DJs. Yeah.
like I think that that's probably art. And so you curating, right? Like, who can argue that like curating a particular apartment and like a collection of colors isn't art?
Well,
And I
people
think
argue
that's
with
the
that.
only
People,
consistent-
but people
then-
do argue that because there are people that argue that DJs aren't musicians. People that do mixes aren't musicians.
Would you argue that though?
No, I wouldn't.
if
I'm just
DJs
trying to
just
say that
play
like,
songs, then.
like you can find other
There's a
people.
difference between DJs who just play like unedited versions of their
Yeah,
own signs.
people will say the
You guys
difference
can
is-
make mashups and mix things together.
I'm just saying
I
it's
do think
silly
there's
to enter the
distinction.
conversation of AI art versus human art and pretend that what is art from a human perspective is solved. This is something that has been debated. Like that is
That's why I said it was
So
an
then-
interesting conversation.
sure,
because
I know,
it
I
is
know.
kind of,
But I'm saying like Pisco trying to come and be like, oh well, no, we clearly know what is art. Art is something that has human intentionality.
No, I'm just saying. Listen, we have
I do
to
think
have.
there's certain parameters that we have decided. Like, there's a reason a photocopier isn't an art, but an art isn't an artist, but an artist is.
Wait, a photocopier can be a tool used to make art.
Exactly.
I think,
yeah, but we wouldn't call it an artist. We wouldn't call a brush an artist, even though it's the thing that
if
makes
you-
the art.
Well, I don't think anyone's calling the AI unless we think the AI has sentience, because I think sentience is necessary.
No,
here.
and that's the thing. Like, I don't think it can create that art.
But human beings who are manipulating the AI, just like they're manipulating the paintbrush, they can be
I think-
artists, can't they?
So wait, why is the thing coming out of the photocopier not art?
Well,
It
hold
is
on.
art.
Quick, careful. The photocopier
No,
question.
it is-
Wait. The
Don't
photocopier.
confuse creativity.
The photocopier question is tricky. They're not asking what is art. They were saying is the
Yeah.
photocopier an artist? Those are two different questions.
Yeah.
Don't get
No,
caught up.
AI is
Yeah.
not an
No, no,
artist.
no, hang on,
The
hang
thing
on.
that comes out is art.
That's an important distinction between the art and the artist. Who's the author of that work? And then another distinction is it a creative or original work deserving of protection? That's something totally different.
I
second
think
one is no.
I don't think. I think the second part gets kind of nebulous because some people do really boring shit, but it's still art. It doesn't have to be creative. Or,
That's what I'm
like,
saying, right? So it's a separate
yeah.
question. If you guys could
Yeah.
say, I could photocopy the Mona Lisa, and each one of those is art, and I'm making art. It's not creative art. It's not original art,
Yeah.
but it is art. I'm intending for it
Yes.
to be art. But on the other hand, me walking to get coffee isn't art. Now, but hang on. If I make it a performance, right? I make the theater, and I want my walk to Dunkin' Donuts to be art, and I put on, and like people come to watch me do this very elaborate routine walk to the Dunkin' Donuts. I think you guys would all agree that's probably art.
Well, so then here's a question: could somebody else?
Wait, would you?
Well,
Steven?
Yeah, if you were doing an intentional performance of it.
Yeah.
But here's a question:
performance
what
are
if
fine.
somebody else decided that it was art, but you didn't?
Those are the harder questions. Yeah. So
Well, but that is the
harder
question because I
questions-
can look at like an AI
that's
art
actually-
and intuitively it feels like what if you do an elaborate thing, but like you just kind of do it yourself. You've got like OCD and you do some crazy shit. But what if I observe it
Yeah.
every day and I'm like, man, this is like artistic.
Well,
this is
let me
so
give you
yeah.
the hard examples for my case are like, and this is why I said either the user or the creator is. Let's say that I totally accidentally slip, and I create this like I don't know, a brush lands on a canvas and it's beautiful and everyone loves it. Everyone agrees it's art, but hell, I never had any intention to make that. Or like, let's say that you accidentally push start stream and you never intended to start a stream and it's just a stream of you eating something in your underwear and the people love it, but you never intended to start that stream. But people are like obsessed with this stream of you eating stuff in your underwear. Like, isn't that art? Even though there's no
Yes.
intentionality behind it. I think that
The perception angle is interesting. Yeah.
that you can't just go on the creator angle, because if you do, then something that is totally indistinguishable that everyone considers art, that humanity views as art, ultimately could be sort of nullified just because you happen to know that this was a complete accident.
Yeah, so then like the intuitive
But I feel like
or go ahead.
if the person that is the person being observed is kind of like, I didn't intend this as art, it's weird that people think this, I feel like they would be kind of qualified in saying like they're not an artist in that way. They don't consider it art, but people observing it can decide what
But
they
isn't that
want,
just
I guess.
memes? Isn't that just meme culture?
No, I think that for art, intent of the artist is also like.
I like
It
that.
seems
So
important too.
so the person who accidentally streams is not an artist, but they created art. Were you okay with that actually? That someone who is not an artist made art.
That's interesting. I hadn't actually thought of that. I feel like that's why I wanted to have this discussion, because there's like a lot of subjective weirdness to it, and I'm curious about delving into it and running into things like this where it's like it is nebulous.
Yeah.
True.
All right, here's another one. Are like stop signs and road paintings art?
No. Unless they're
Okay.
intended to be, right? Let's say you make a
Well,
stop
so
sign
then-
and
but
you
then-
There was actually a
hold on,
discussion about this
hold
the
on.
other day
Let me-
in go ahead, sorry.
I was going to follow up on that. So then when we go back and we find the cave paintings of trying of like deer migration patterns or things like that, we call that art. That's cave art. So why is it
Yeah,
not the same?
I think
Wait,
that
what?
I think there has to be an intentionality. Now things can be multi-purpose, right? Maybe it's both artistic and it's functional. I don't think that everything has to be one thing. but I think there has to be a modicum of intentionality, or a modicum of creativity, or a desire to put something into existence. That
People were
is
talking
art.
about this the
I don't
other
think so.
day in like DGG art chat about like our doorknobs art, and it's like, well, probably there was an original artist who designed the doorknob, but like probably the end result that's like mass manufactured.
Can you not
without
make
the
black
intent
colors?
Of it being like art is more debatable.
Isn't it?
Wait,
Isn't
did
the
you say
design
I
of the
don't think
doorknob
so,
supposed to
Rachel?
be aesthetically pleasing?
Rachel,
Yeah,
did you just say I don't think so?
Yeah, I don't think you need
Then what?
intentionality.
Then sorry. Then everything is art. Then.
Yeah, I mean,
what
it could
isn't
be as
art?
long as people perceive it as art. Because, like, imagine all the memes that get made of like people like cut on stream, or people just random images that get taken, like the 1984 comics,
But that is what
or
they
things
do,
like
though.
that.
So everything is art. But wait.
Yeah,
So
everything can be art. Yeah.
okay. But that's our position, right? Everything can be art.
No, that's our
But you're-
position.
No.
That's my position. Yeah.
So
AI makes
everything
art.
can be art, so long, but there has to be a connection to a sentient or conscious creature having some kind of reaction or intentionality behind what.
Wait, hold on, whoa. Reaction and intention, you described the opposite sides of both of those things, right? Because that's so like here's the question. You walk into a place and you see a grand, awesome, beautiful mural on a wall. It elicits a ton of emotions from you. You feel a certain type of way about it. And then you know, wow, that's the most beautiful piece of art I've ever seen. Then somebody comes by later and they tell you, oh, well, actually, that thing just landed there by accident. Like the rain fell on a certain pattern and created a thing. Is it no longer art to you, or?
I think that there has to be some space for viewers and observers and art enjoyers to determine something to be art, even though its creation or its inception was not intentional.
Right. So then here's one. If we want to go to the audience enjoyment, well then, if a guy takes a shotgun, shoots himself in the head, splatters it all over the wall, and it's now an album cover, is that art?
Yeah, I think if you take that picture, I think that would not only do I think it's art, I think that would be probably protected in the United States.
Okay, but I guess
Chad just said it's art. People using an art artist though, their clients. But yeah, I can agree more with that. I still don't think AI itself can really make. I think it gets back to the definition of like art being filtered through something, but I do think that that's a more accurate representation than what most people are saying.
If people can enjoy something that wouldn't traditionally be art, why would AI creating images not be considered art if people enjoyed them the same way? If I was to be able to put it up as a logo for my company, no one would ever know the difference.
Like we were talking about before, how basically anything can be enjoyed as art. Like you can look at what was it, like a crumb on the desk and be like, wow, that's art.
That is just the most beautiful crumb.
Yeah.
That's.
But whether most people would agree is kind of where it gets.
I think you have to make some kind of appeal to, from the viewer perspective. I haven't thought about this. I'm just thinking out loud. There has to be some kind of appeal to consensus or to agreement with respect to the viewer experience. And I think that like it might be sufficient for just one person to intend something for that to be art by itself. Maybe that's how I would distinguish it.
And so then next thing I would say is you're totally ignoring the intention of the person who is creating the AI, because the purpose of that AI is to be able to make hundreds or millions or infinite
I think that could be art. Yeah, no, I totally think that could be art. Yeah.
So this is where it's interesting to me. What is the difference between that and somebody doing Google image search? If all they're doing is typing words and then something comes back.
Wait, no, it might be. Wait, hang on.
Novel when it's literally just taking things just from its database.
Novelty can't be a part of your
taking
argument.
anything from its database. Do you know how AI art is generated?
So it learns off a database, and
Sure.
I think when
Rachel,
it's
you have to bite the
down
bullet. Rachel, you have to bite the bullet there.
Bite the bullet on
that it wouldn't be able to generate the things it
search
creates
can
without that
absolutely
original
be art.
database.
You have to bite the
I
bullet.
mean, Google search would be art, but it's not.
What?
You're
You
not
just said
creating
looking
art
at
by
a
doing
crumb
Google
and
image
thinking
search.
it's art makes it art. You just said that. So how would a Google search not be art if you wanted it to be? Or
Well,
if you thought
it wouldn't be.
was a
It wouldn't be
beautiful search.
new, novel, creative art the same way that an AI creating it is.
Wait, no,
The same way the
novelty
photocopier
can't be a
isn't.
part of your definition of art. Is creativity and novelty part of your art definition?
Yeah, 'cause there's a
Creativity,
whole,
no.
like,
Novelty,
nothing
yes.
is-
Wait, so
Yeah.
a crumb is novel and creative to you, and that's meaning your definition?
That's unique in 3 dimensions, sure. Or,
Dude, stop. Because the
That seems
okay,
a bit much.
if that's unique enough, then the Google search has different
I mean, if I
electrons
was to
going
post a
off.
picture of my crumb on Reddit and people were like, "Wow, that's the most amazing
No,
crumb,"
wait,
then
but
yeah,
you
that's
posting
art.
a picture of that crumb is the art. That's the art. That's you taking
Can't see it in
your.
person. All right, so if I open a museum in my bedroom where there's like the breadcrumbs or whatever that I spilled on the floor, and I exhibit.
Same thing with the Google
Yeah,
searches.
that's the intent.
I go to the
art by doing that.
Yeah.
You're showing people how you're observing this thing and going, yes, I perceive this as art. Please look at it in the same way I view it because this is what I see in my head and why it's art.
Absolutely, yeah. The Google search is totally. There's nothing that distinguishes it from the Chrome example.
Well, no, the thing that Google search is explicitly doing is it's explicitly copying images that are out there already and just displaying them for you. So it's just
Why is copying not art? Copying is art. If someone perceives it as art, it's
people
art.
could copy master paintings and it was art. So
I don't understand why you were saying copying isn't art. A Google image search under your view is just as much art as AI.
Damn.
Sure, I guess if you want to do it like that, it doesn't. I think fundamentally there's.
What do you mean if I want to do it like that?
Copying and returning things that are already there.
Yeah, it is. It can be art.
I mean,
why are you so hesitant?
Because I personally wouldn't consider a Google image search art, but you could.
Why not?
Why wouldn't you? Is it
because you're just literally taking
art?
something that's there. It's the same thing. Like if I take 5 pictures out of a magazine and I stick them like together, I'm not going to say that's
more
art.
Than that, though. Collage is literally more art with intention.
What do you mean?
Google
image search is just digital collage.
No, a collage is art.
The computer.
You said a crumb is art.
Unless you take those images and collage them together.
I personally wouldn't consider it art, but if a 3-year-old...
Why not? Well, why wouldn't you consider it art?
Because I don't think sticking things together that are already out there in ways that are hardly novel
What?
Literally AI.
Bro,
That's
you
not
said
what
the
AI
only
is
thing
at all. You don't. You just
It
don't
basically is because it literally wouldn't be able to create what it's creating without the representations that it already has. If you just put experiences into it, if you just put preferences.
I mean, I think
Yes,
that, to be clear, that's the same. That's the same with
generative
humans.
AI.
Blind humans wouldn't be able to draw art, right? They can do the mechanical things, but they can't draw art in a meaningful way for us because they can't see it. They need references as well. Humans.
But
need
they can do
references.
sculpture.
So
And if they
that's a- but not- but that's
they
not-
would still have their own preferences to do it.
But that's
Okay,
a different thing, right?
but
If you remove
AI
if you took a crippled blind person, they wouldn't be able to do it, right?
You can
Rage, I
create
can't
AI
get over
from
this.
Scratch. You don't even need any human
No, I
images.
think
You
that-
can train it from scratch by itself. It would just take a lot longer, so people just don't do it. And you could
Wait,
still
no.
put text in
We've
those.
seen AI trained on like really shitty small models, and it creates absolute garbage.
Oh wait, because these are really shitty small models. If you wanted to put like $200 million into it, you could train it from absolute scratch, where it'd be generating its own images, its own captions, and everything else. And you could have it self-train over time through a GAN or something of that nature in order to get it to.
You don't even need that though, Rage. I mean,
So
but
again,
why
it's
even
still
talk
not
about
going to
AI if you
modify or filter through that through anything other than what it's already seen image-wise? It's literally just taking the images and creating things based on those images, and that's why it's different from a human. That's
Wait, a human only can create based on the things that it's already seen and created in the past.
not
That's no
just
different than
the
an
images.
model at
A
any point in
human
time.
doesn't create art just from the art that a human has seen. It's not just going like, oh, I saw this comic, I saw this painting. Now,
I mean,
all the art created
how else
is just
does it
going to
get
solely.
It does.
It's
It's
not
just-
going to solely be created on those.
It is.
Not
It's just a little
solely.
bit. It is.
It
You're
is.
just not cognizant of it,
No.
right? Of course.
No,
You can't create
absolutely
art based on
not.
things
It's
you
not
have no
solely
experience
created-
of.
No, it is not the sole input though. Having the art and seeing the art you see be the sole input is bonkers. That's the
Okay,
problem.
so
It's
if I
like
added
all
some
the
music
other
to
aspects
training
in
my
your life.
model, if I added some music, if I, added some text, if I
No,
added
this is where
some
this
other
is
stuff.
why I like made the sentient conversation because I feel like a person's preferences, their muscle memory, their knowledge, their what makes them makes them make things different from the next artist who has seen the same
Okay, but
paintings.
The AI does something different, and every AI you create is going to be different, and it still
No, but it's
creates
only-
things that people would
It's
consider
not
as
that-
Here's
Why
the,
would
this
it
is
be
what's, wait, this is what's
Everything
wait, this
is-
is what's happening. This is why the conversation seems like it's more, but you're making it more complicated than it is. We're saying that AI art creates art based on inputs, and that we understand that it's limited to that. And you're like, okay, well, humans don't just create art based on inputs; they create art
Yeah.
based on their inputs and more complicated inputs. That's all you're saying.
Yeah, and I'm saying that
But
AI,
AI
doesn't have enough complicated inputs to do
Steven,
more
you're
than
being
just
slippery.
like reproducing.
I'm not
them
being
in
slippery. She's
different
saying
things.
because
you are.
no, because she's saying that like, hold on. Well, AI art just gets a bunch of images and puts things in, but humans
Yeah.
have like a collection, a lifetime of images. Okay, well, you could filter those same images into an AI, the exact same images, but you probably still wouldn't say, oh, well, now it's art. You probably wouldn't feel any differently at all about it.
You guys are
No, I'm
misrepresenting
saying
how
if an
wide your
AI
position
has,
is.
yeah, if an AI has preferences, I would consider it art. I would consider that filtering it through something that isn't just a tool that takes point A to
that's-
point B.
That's what it does internally, though. It takes a look at its
No, it
output, and if
doesn't.
its output doesn't match, yeah, you can put a discriminator function on there where it'll discriminate.
Yeah.
It'll take a look at the final output
But
of art
it's
and say,
still
no, this is something I
only
don't like,
using
and then
those
spit
things
something
within
more.
it. That's the thing.
But only
It's not
humans are
using
as well.
anything
Humans
from
can
what it's-
only use what they've seen and what's in it. It's not like some unique.
But what I'm saying is humans are using more than just the art they've seen, and I think that that's an important distinction, and that's what makes it.
Wait, what
different
else
than
could a
just
human
the art.
possibly use than the things it's seen?
Not just the things it. Sorry, the things it's seen. Well, actually, no. Muscle memory is a thing that is not seen.
Why we keep
There's
saying muscle
also-
memory like it's some special, unique thing. This can be emulated.
It is. There are certain artists can do like things that I can't do because they have better
Certain
muscle
things
memory to do
robots
stuff.
can do that
No,
you can't do.
you can do anything an artist can do.
true.
It's just a matter of training for it, right?
Yeah, I do think training is filtered through like a person, like their ability to practice and do that thing, and like how exactly they want to mimic somebody else's style. I feel like all of that is filtering through human experience.
I don't understand why
This is
fucking
filtering
critters got on
through
this
robot
planet.
experience.
Are
I
10
don't
things
think
not enough to
robots
shoot down
really-
biter asteroids? I don't understand.
I don't think it experiences. It only has
So
the
you
image
just-
data that you're giving it.
So
It
you
doesn't
just feel
experience
that
is
the
the
robot,
thing.
You just feel that the AI doesn't
No.
do things, even though you're having a human training
No,
it
no,
and
no.
making the choices as to what images to feed it, how to train it, and what outputs it wants in and out. And that's not enough for it to be art, even though you have a human using a tool to create an output that looks better.
I
than
have
what-
said I think that would be like the more debatable part, but I don't think it's actually human. I don't think it's art unless a human modifies it beyond that. I think people who do
Wait, what?
in painting and stuff, that I would be more willing to budge on and say that that's art, because a human is like painting the parts of the painting, things like that, choosing with intention, not just like, hey, anime titty lady, and then it just summons the anime titty lady, you know?
Well, but he's already created the tool for that, right? Because then you're going to
he
say,
hasn't.
run into the same thing as like, say I have a
No.
pen, right? Well, all you're doing when I'm taking a pen and drawing with a pen is using a tool to put some blots on an image,
Yeah, but
right?
you're
I'm just
choosing
using a
where those
tool and I'm
blots
not
on the image
modifying
go.
it any further.
No, but you're choosing where you place all those blobs. You're choosing what that tool does, far more specifically than AI art does.
Okay, but if I take a paintbrush and splatter it on
That's still a
a
choice.
canvas,
That's an intentional
it's-
artistic choice.
it's an intentional artistic choice.
You guys
for
are
me
putting
to
the cart
put
before the
filters
horse. They
on
got
it.
these people think Destiny and Ragepope think that like Mother Nature making a flower petal,
So-
as long as someone, a human observer, believes it to be art, that's all it takes for them to think it's art. That's
So
my
then-
understanding. So like I don't know why you're wasting all this time talking about the creation process from
No,
your
no.
side,
Let's go-
Ragepope,
let's
because
go
like
another one. What
you
about-
think that any little fleck of dust, as long as one person perceives it as art, is art. In which case, it's just I don't know what it's too broad to be useful at all.
Yeah, welcome to fucking art.
Oh,
Well, I feel like that's
no,
like the
no,
problem, though.
any
It's
word
the
that's
same thing
that
happening
broad.
with, like a lot of terms nowadays is they get diluted until they're no longer useful.
So
Like Nazi.
That's
or
your
like
problem with the
rape,
term
things like
with-
that.
So, I just
with
want to step
gender.
back to the tool thing for 1 second, then we'll go to piece goes one. So for the tool thing, what about a camera, right? The camera has no agency. It just does whatever you do.
No, but a
and then it
person
copies
chooses
exactly
to
what
take a
it
photo
says.
and makes the decisions in that.
Well, but I
in that.
chose to use my AI to make the thing that I wanted to make.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I just don't think it really is in the same way though. I think that's like the closest thing
How is it not any different? Because the tool that you're putting in, every time I put something into the tool, it's going to spit me out.
I just
something
don't see how
different
that's
that I may
measurably
not like.
different than like somebody typing something into Google image search, really. Like I feel like the concept is
So,
there,
so
but
Google
I don't
image
think the
search.
execution.
So
yeah.
when Google image search goes off, it says, "Hey, what images are on the internet that matches tree?" And it'll take hundreds or thousands,
AI goes,
however many
"I've learned
images, and
that
just
when
display
people-
those.
Yeah. But when you type something in AI and it goes, "Oh, I've learned that when images are
No, it
titled
doesn't.
this, they look
I
somewhat
thought you
like
agreed.
this."
I thought was it
no,
art.
that's
Wait,
not-
Ragepope, you had already agreed
Yes, it's
that
like
a Google
image
search
and word pairs
can be
is like
art.
a huge basis for it.
I personally don't think it's art, but I don't.
Wait,
know
no,
how
no.
to
You
define art.
wait. You
I don't
agreed.
think
I thought we
collages are
agreed on
art.
that. Wait,
No,
a collage is not art. A
No, I don't
playlist
think
can't
it's
be
art.
art, but a fleck of dust can be if one person thinks it is, or like a piece of poop. If
Not if
one
one
person in the
thinks-
entire world
if
thinks that that's art,
hundreds of
it's
people
art.
think it is,
but
then
not a
yes.
collage.
But not one person. If one person doesn't, fuck. All right. So if you just make a collage, I just think that's copying and sticking things together. I don't think it has any real meaning or anything else. If a million
Dude.
people in the world say that's art, that's fine. Because
Yeah,
again,
there's
art is
a
literally
lot of
just
people that think
subjective.
art, yeah.
It doesn't mean.
I'm asking. Okay,
It
so
only
if-
has meaning
Don't get
if
into
other
this,
people
and
assign
don't
meaning.
fight. Then don't fight her on the Google image search. If all it takes is subjectivity, don't fight on the Google image search
Also,
and say
everybody
yes.
who's like saying I'm just
because
hating on art
when I
and worried
create
about losing
Google
my
image
job.
search,
I think
people aren't saying that
AI
it's
things, art things are really fucking cool, and I'm really hyped about them as tools, and I'm really excited to use them. I'm not stressed about that. That's not why I think it's an interesting discussion because it's so subjective and weird.
Wait, Pisco brought up something that I think is interesting that I wanted to ask earlier is, do you guys think that nature can create art?
I think of enough people. My personal opinion is if there's one person who intends to make a piece of art, who intends to do it creatively, I think that intentionality from the creator side is probably enough to make it art. And I think from the the experiencer side, I think it requires more than just one person's idiosyncratic view. I think it would probably require some kind of consensus because otherwise, literally, we could say one person who thinks their piece of poop, a piece of poop that someone else poos, who didn't intend for it to be art, just looks at it like, wow, that is magnifique. Then like all of a sudden that's art. Then the definition, I think that for the experiencer side of it, there probably needs to be something more substantial than one person considering it to be art.
Would you be okay with religious people saying that the Grand Canyon is art because God made it?
Am I okay with it?
Would you be accepting of that being art?
But think about that. Think about what they mean when they say that. What do they mean when they say the Grand Canyon is art because God made it? They are ascribing to God an intentionality. This is part of his design. And even with the people who try to, even for the people who try to like say that evolution is part of God's plan, it's because God is the prime mover. He's the designer of this plan. That's what they mean by that.
So then, if you don't believe in God, then do you not believe that it's art?
I think that.
Then now is it art?
I think that takes away the creator kind of art. And
you're re-asking the analogy that I gave earlier of imagine you stumble into a forest, you find a beautiful painting on a wall, and then you find out later that it was there by accident versus there being created by somebody, right?
Yeah, but in that case, like that's what I mean. Like it can't, for the creator, I think that it's enough if there's probably enough if you have an intentionality to put something into creation that's art. But for the viewer side, there needs to be something more. There needs to be an agreement or something else more substantial other than just any sentient creature's individualistic perception. Otherwise, it really just blows up. And I don't know why Rage Hope is fighting on the Google search or like fighting on these weird grounds.
Because I think you need more than one person to just.
Yeah. Okay. So then it seems like everyone agrees on that, and so it's not just purely subjective. Otherwise, the word is truly meaningless. And I don't think that even Stephen thinks it's truly meaningless.
I do.
Okay. Then everything is art. Then me.
Yeah, that's You're not saying anything like that's not a gotcha.
You coughing is art.
You're not going to say anything here that is going to be novel to me, right? Yes, this is the whole debate on what is art, right? John Cage's piano piece, 4:33, I think, is just him lifting the piano thing and sitting there for 4 minutes and 33 seconds, saying the sounds around us are music. Anything is music. That was literally the point of that piece, right? And I'm sure you can find equivalents. I only know music, but I'm sure you can find equivalents to that across every single art discipline where people are like anything can be art. Look at all the Pollock paintings or whatever, like the random fucking shit. Yeah, of course. Like just trying to challenge me. Like, so do you think anything can be art? Yeah, people have been arguing this for centuries.
Any one individual, no matter how insane, no matter the whole world, all sentience except for one sentient creature can be in agreement that thing is really just mundane. It's really just empty space. It's nothing. It's actually nothing. But there's one person, one mind that says that nothing is really, really beautiful. There's beauty there, and that's art. And the one outweighs the multitudes.
Art is not decided by committee. Like that definition, I would never go with. That in order for it to be considered art, there has to be like a majority of people that agree that it's art.
It doesn't have to be a majority. There just has to be more than one. Like,
doesn't need to be more than one. One person couldn't make art for themselves.
This is just kind of like
no. I'm saying if more people
deciding like who is beautiful and who isn't, everybody's going to have some disagreements, but there are largely broad categories that we can all agree on.
Not when the question is what is art or what is music or what is
people. There are a large. I would say that you can gather a large group of people, and a lot will feel the same way about what art is and have the similar definition.
Saying that people will agree with each other is not the same as saying we can like nail down an objective definition of
that's what words are. That's what words are. That I mean, I don't know what you would never argue this in the case of gender. Like you always have argued against people saying, well, anything can be a gender as long as one person.
No, because gender is different. Because gender is referring to a concept where there's a fact of the matter about gender. It's not like
please.
Okay, what? Wait, do you think that's a point?
Wait. So there's a fact. There are facts of the matter about any kind of art. The fact is how many people agree with it.
No, there's a difference. Gender is hopefully, ideally, gender is our attempt to describe something that maps onto reality. Art is not something that maps onto reality. That is a completely ontologically unique category that humans have created. Art doesn't exist in nature.
All these things are about perception, right? I mean, sandwich.
No,
what is a
no,
sandwich? What is
no,
a chair?
no.
Wait, is there a fact of the matter to what a chair is?
No, but a chair would be similar. No, a chair would be similar. A chair would be similar to art, right? I would agree with you
Okay, is
there.
there a fact of the matter to what a human being is?
The category of human being, I guess, would be there, but like hopefully there's a difference between describing.
Wait, is there?
You're in debate mode. You're not listening to me. I'm good. Talk to Rich Pope. I can't. If you're just gonna be in debate mode, like you're not, because there's clearly the difference. If you can't see it, then the conversation is either beyond you or you're too debate brain right now to hear what I'm saying. Let me finish. There's a huge difference between saying there's a tree and then going like, whoa, tree, what is a tree? Versus this is art, right? These are two totally different things. Do you see that those are two different things, or do you think it's all the same?
I think those are all categories. Language itself is. Wait, hang on a second.
No, that's fine. I can't do this.
Wait, you can't. You actually can.
I can't. If you're gonna say that's all the same shit, then my brain is. I can't. I'm too.
Wait, you can. I mean, what is language if not?
Come on.
We're not talking about language. We're talking about these things. If humans were to disappear, okay? If humans were to disappear,
no more
trees, the things that are trees, like would still be there, but the whole idea of art is gone. Yeah, I think so. Yes.
Yeah.
Wait. So the concept, the category of tree exists without people. I mean, categories in language is just our way of looking at things and looking at patterns, right? I mean, if there is no one to think about the categories and to deal with them, what is the category?
That's a good question. Ask, where's Rage Pope?
I'm actually surprised that we got stuck on this facet of the topic for too long. My second part of the topic was going to be, is current AI ethically made?
The ethical parts are all boring because all of it follows from this conversation. The challenging conversation is the only thing that matters. Once you figure out that part, everything else like falls in very, very, very easily. It's like abortion. Like figuring out abortion is pretty easy if you figure out if like the fetus is a human being or if it's just like a clump of cells, right? The challenging part is that part of the conversation.
Pisco, I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
Do you think a concept can be art?
A category itself being art?
Like, for example, like the Milky Way galaxy. I don't think we actually have like a picture of it. We might have from like some satellite, but like that general idea of something so vast and has beauty in its like structure, but we can't picture it exactly. Do you think that's art as well?
Yeah, I think names.
And I think that makes it really, really broad also, and then it starts to lose meaning there again. It dilutes it a lot.
I think names can be art.
Can you define art for me?
And titles can be art. Me?
Something
either you
something
or
made with intent and with conscious choices by a human, where they control kind of their preferences, experiences are all displayed in the end result.
Okay, so when I create an AI, I have intent to create a machine or a tool that will assist me in taking my thoughts, my words, my drawing inputs, and creating an output. It is a conscious choice for me to put together specific words, phrases, or even drawings into my AI.
The same thing is, what's the difference between you typing that in Google image search? Why is it different? Why is the result you get from that? Why does that make it art when Google image search isn't art? Because
Google image search is literally just an index of pictures that are already out there.
But in terms of the effort that you're putting in as an artist,
what do you mean? It takes hundreds of millions of dollars to collect all the pictures that I need to train it.
Who cares about the amount of money? Wait. Why are you talking about the amount of money?
Yeah, somebody did, but not you.
Well, because she's talking about effort. That is
wait. Effort has never been a part.
No.
I don't think effort should be a part of our.
She said it was so.
Ooh.
No, I think you're sticking on something small amidst the broader things, which I said, which is like.
Well, so there's intentionality, right? So I am meaning to create this AI, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is that.
But also, why? How is it different from you going to Google image search and being like, typing in what you want to see there? That's like literally.
So Google image search, what it does, it's an index of things that already exist.
So I know you've said this already, but from an artist's perspective, from your like input into the end result, how is it different? How are you influencing it differently?
So one, you get the exact same thing out every time. Every time you use the AI tool, you will not get the same thing back out. The second thing is
that's not
Wait,
just
wait,
you.
a photocopier makes art.
Hold on.
Wait, why does novelty?
The thing that comes out of the photocopier is art. So the picture that you see.
So this
on the
is art.
screen-
So the Google search is art.
So there's a difference between what I would consider art and what you can consider art. Because if we're just going to do that, literally everything can be
No,
art.
you're
You have to
not
be artist.
explaining what's different about it. You're agreeing that a copy.
Yeah.
No, I'm not. I'm saying that you're literally seeing copies of everything else. And so if you're saying, am I making original art by going to Google and typing in
No
tree?
one's talking about
The answer
original
is
art. No, wait.
Well, I'm
You
talking-
keep playing this shell game.
Wait,
no
no,
one's
I'm
talking
not-
about original art. We're talking
She's
about
saying it's
what
not
is
art at all.
art. But yeah, so that's
Sure. Okay.
I'm
So then,
assuming
by
that's
the
what
same
you're
definition, the
talking
AI.
about.
Sorry, saying it isn't. You're saying that because I'm saying Google art isn't art, then the
You're-
AI that has the same output isn't art either.
Well, let's be clear what we're not talking about. You guys are arguing about what is art, and so you like originality should not be popping its head here if we're all agreeing that like you making a copy of a piece of art is making
Okay. So,
art.
so if we ignore the Google image thing, so we have intent.
Why?
we have
Because that's the
No,
part that you don't
just
like.
Why? I think
looking
that
down
that's
her definition
important
and whether or
because
not you get
literally-
originality out is irrelevant, and then you're saying that because I say it's not art, well then AI isn't art when it
Why
doesn't
don't you
follow
just
when I'm
say-
using
I mean-
her definition when you're putting your own definition on top of what.
No, I've already said that like if you do in painting or something like that where you're having an active like part, more of an active part in the process than just like
So I just want to go back to your definition.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have intent. We have a conscious choice of putting things in. And then the previous experiences of the program and the human who made it are on display. That meets all definitions for what you consider art.
And so does the Google search. So I don't know why you're
Sure,
like,
yes, it does. And so it doesn't matter because it meets her definition, not my definition.
oh, well, I'm asking you your definition because you seem to think that I
I
probably
think there
agree-
has to
No,
be-
no, I just want to be clear. I probably agree with you that a lot of AI art is probably art, but you also agree with that. And so I want to know under what metric the Google search is not art under your definition.
So under my definition, it's not sufficiently unique. If I was to go copy
Yeah.
30 seconds of song, if I was to copy like 30 seconds of song from like 10 different songs and put it together, I wouldn't consider that art. That's not sufficiently unique.
Now you have
and
problems. Now you have problems because if
Why?
I make a copy, a literal copy on a flash drive of a song, are you going to say that that copied version, this is a new version on a new piece of, it exists in physical space on this drive? Is that art or not?
So the song itself would be art, but you didn't create it by the act of copying.
Yeah, I did. Wait. I created the art by copying it. That's art. Isn't it art?
So this is.
Wait,
it's
is
the
that
ship
art?
is-
Yes or no?
Transposing
I mean,
data isn't art in and of itself.
No, the thing
The
you
thing,
made,
the thing that you've created is art, but the act, but what you've
the
done isn't.
novelty and originality are not part of your definition of art.
No, that's not part of her definition of art.
No,
It's
I'm
part of
asking
my
about yours.
definition.
I'm
I said it
asking
had to
about
be
yours.
sufficiently. So
I'm
I
asking
think
for
art.
you. Is originality and novelty part of your definition of
Yes,
art?
I would say that it needs to be sufficiently unique from things that have already been created, and it has to be enjoyable
I ask
to.
again, is that copied version of the song art?
No,
And-
I don't think.
So there's only one copy of everything, and that's the only thing that's art. Like only the one master tape of that song is art. The rest of them are not art.
It's art in the same way, but it's.
I
the
think
same
here. Wait,
piece of
hold on.
art.
Let me figure this. Let me navigate this one. This might be a tricky reference thing. The art here's a question. Oh my god! I just brain blasted my way through this because of the two paragraphs I've read on language before. You ready? If I'm listening to a song on my computer, okay, and it's a Nickelback song, and you're listening to the same Nickelback song on your computer, are we listening to the same song, or are we listening to two different pieces of art?
What?
I think. Okay, I think you are listening to the same song.
Yep. So then when you ask, are you creating new art when you make a copy of
I
something?
didn't say new art. Are you creating art?
Okay, but well, are you creating a song when you copy a song? It seems like there's probably something a little bit different going on there, because even if you copied a song and you made a different like copy of the song, if somebody else listened to it, they'd still say it's the same song, right? I don't know if things that are references of other things are like creating art,
they're like-
which would also solve the issue that
There
we
are
have with
covers
the
of
hold on,
songs and
which would
things like
also solve
that.
the issue that we have with the Google search engine thing, because when we search for something on Google, we're not creating something new. They're just references to other already existing things.
So
I knew
think
the
another
Google
thing-
search was not fucking art, but I couldn't explain it. Thank you.
yeah,
I
so
agree.
I don't think it helps them. I think it creates a
yeah,
whole.
no. So here's
No.
another thing that I would say. I would say that originality isn't needed necessarily for art, but any work that's originally created or any original creative work would be enact or would create art.
So then here are the problems that might create. So on the one hand, now we're saying that me photocopying a bunch of paintings or whatever images, those are all art pieces, correct? And we are creating art, but they're just references to art.
Well, so then we would probably
Yes.
say a reference probably isn't art.
But why?
Well, it is art, but it's not art because of the creative process. It's art because there's something that's already sufficiently created.
It's a
be
reference
considered
to other
that you can
art.
distribute.
Like when I
don't
download a
understand
song
why
on my computer, I'm not creating a new song. I'm just creating a
You
reference.
guys are all
to another
tripping
thing.
because listen, none of this matters. This creation process for your definition it's meaningless. I don't know why Steven and Destiny is like you're even having this conversation about what art is because you already think it's meaningless.
Well,
And so
I'm trying to
really, you
sort
shouldn't
through.
even be talking.
I don't. You're the ones that are having this conversation about us. But I was trying to sort through the complicatedness of, or figuring out why Rage Pope is trying to say that the Google image search wouldn't count as art, but like a new creation by an AI might count as art, because it seems like on a superficial level, you're putting in an input and you are getting out pictures, right? You can do it with Google image search, or you can do it with an AI thing. So what's the meaningful difference?
Okay, so
and
all I
think
have
the
to do
difference
to
is
break
the
that entire
difference is.
hypothetical, all I have to
go
do to
ahead.
break the entire hypothetical is say, okay, then program for Google searches trivially alters the 1 millionth search thing and changes the order of it very slightly to make it effectively mathematically unique every time you do it.
But it's not-
Sure,
it
but
has
if
to
you
be a
start-
certain
No, but
level of
that's not-
uniqueness.
If you start
So
building,
if
if
you-
you start making that sufficiently complicated, now you've recreated AI art. If you're starting to talk about that, like every time you create an image search, it's going to actually start to
Yeah, but
alter
it
the
doesn't
data in
feel
some
like
way.
the problem
I
is that
think,
Rachel doesn't want
like-
to say because it doesn't feel like art to him.
If somebody enters the exact same prompt as you do, what makes it measurably unique to you? What makes the output measurably unique to like your
What if two
artistic
people
eye
create the
experience?
same song on Ableton using the same samples? Like, are they
No,
creating
I
songs?
doubt-
Doubt it would
If you
be exactly the same.
Well-
I think there would be subtle differences.
No, well, hold on, no. There's no difference. If you're using the same samples, so you're using the same preset, like little sound
Yeah.
fonts, and then you both like type in like a really basic piece, like for a music theory class, you could very easily have two people create the exact same thing. And sonically, it will be the exact same. By waveform, it'll be the exact same. Everything will be the exact same. But like, are they both creating art or no?
I guess I don't know enough.
God, fucking synergy. Just fucking close my fucking Discord. I hate this.
But it would be like a cover. I mean, there's words for that.
Sorry, hold on. I just came back at the end of that. My shit just reset. Did you say it would be like
I
a
think it's all
cover?
art.
No, it would
Is
just
that-
be
is that-
exactly the same thing. No. You put two people in a room. They both come up with the exact same song. Then they both make unique works of art.
Yeah, of course. In your definition, I don't understand why it wouldn't.
It would be the same work of art.
I
but
just think it would
they-
be
Wait,
infinitely
name?
difficult to have two people create the exact same thing in most cases.
Yeah, but that's
Your
going to be
definition of art
that's going to be true for AI art as well, right? Because different databases, even altering a few images, could theoretically spit out completely different things, right? Like when you're talking about like
that's not,
like
but
ML
that's not what
code.
that's not what the intervention or intention of the artist, though, is the thing.
Well, but hold on, but now you're not saying anything about the intervention artist. Before you were just saying it was unique.
Oh, sorry.
If you want to say something about intervention, that's a totally different thing. But like the whole point of like when you talk about like machine learning code, this is like incomprehensible to humans. Like nobody goes through and like debugs like it's all like a bunch of jarbled shit.
It's
Well, you
all
can figure it
all
out. It's
bullshit.
just
You guys are
computationally
talking about originality. You guys said a fleck of dust could be art. And so I don't know why
It
we're
could
even
be if
like
enough
talking
people-
about originality and novelty when you guys are like any piece of dust on my desk could be art. And now you guys are talking about originality.
art, but it's
and-
not.
Yeah, but
is that if
hold
it's
on,
gonna-
wait, stop.
Every
Okay,
speck-
hold on, stop. The reason why people are saying the speck of dust could be art is because it seems like what could be art, we're talking about the other side of the equation. You've got the intention of the artist, but it seems like the observation of an observer could also make something art. When we talk about the speck of dust, like a random speck of dust probably isn't going to be art, but if I show you like a random speck of dust in a museum and you're like, what the fuck is that? And I'm like, this is the last ash pulled out of Auschwitz of like a dead Jewish child. Well, now it feels a lot different. What, because it's art? Did the Nazis intend to create art? No. Did the Jewish person want to be disintegrated and made it art? No. It's because of the observation, because the person looking at it has a certain meaning or a way that they feel about it. But that's completely divorced from the intention of the person creating it. So could a random speck of dust be art?
wait,
Sure.
I already-
Based on that
we
observation,
already
what they then
agreed.
Like,
I think everyone here already agreed that there has to be some room for unintended things to be art, and
No.
that has to do with the observer. But
Wait, did we all agree on that?
I agree with that from the
If
start.
everybody agrees with that, then that means that AI art can be art, because as long as somebody observes it and they
I
feel
think
like it's art, then
I think AI art can be art.
Then what the
but
fuck are you even
guys talking
arguing?
about-
What are you arguing with?
No. You guys are talking about originality and that art is literally a meaningless term. And if art is literally a meaningless term, then this entire discussion has been absolutely
art
incoherent.
feels
worthless.
meaningless, like a meaningless term, because in the broadest sense, like art could be defined as like either something that was created to make somebody feel some way, or something that's perceived as something that's perceived by a perceiver that makes them feel a way. But like what you've defined there at that point is essentially every observable thing by mankind. That's why it's kind of like a meaningless definition. Anything can be perceived. Constellations in the sky that people have made, or like drawn through, like, is that art? Because they're fucking stars, they're like balls of fucking hydrogen. Nobody had an intention behind that. So if
Isn't this like the point then?
That was the God point. That was the
no,
when
it's not a
people say
God
that, like,
point. I'm just saying that if anything can be perceived as art, it seems kind of pointless to like have a strict definition of it.
But I think that it's the whole same thing with aesthetics, where we can't really nail down, like with like clinical textbook rules, everything about what contributes to something looking beautiful. Like beauty is subjective, so there's always going to be differences of opinion. But largely, we can like make broad kind of judgments on things that most people will agree with to a certain degree.
Most people would say that AI art is art. If I went to a corporation and I said, here are 20 logos, choose the one that you like, and all of them came from an AI and they chose it and used it to represent their business, then that's art.
And that's a good argument. That's a good argument for AI being art. But you don't pretend that anything can be art just because one person.
No, I didn't say
their own-
one person. I would say a few people would have to
That's
see
what
it
Steven
that way.
says.
I think they're art in the same way that like a photocopy is art, though it's not something new generated from.
Wait, how is it not something new? It's the first time that thing's been put together, or anything even reasonably close to it has been put together. How is that not art?
That's fair. This is tricky. I just don't think that I think it requires more human intervention than AI currently does, because I don't see the meaningful difference between two people entering the same prompt, and even though they're getting different results, it's not because a human made those results different. And I feel like the human intent in choosing those, otherwise it's just like an image randomizer. It's just like the cloud filter.
Why does the human
it's
factor
not.
play such a huge
Choosing-
role for you, though? Right? Like, why does the human have to be involved for something to be art? That seems to be what you
Because
keep on
that's-
insinuating.
The humans
I
involved.
think intent. Yeah, I think intent is part of what
So
makes
there
art.
is
I think
intent. There
filtering
is a
it through-
lot of.
But what is the meaningful difference between when you and another person enter the exact same prompt, even if you
Because
have both
I'm
the
the
same intent
one-
with the prompt? How is it going to take your
because we're
individual
using the
experiences and put that in
tool.
the output? It's not going to, is the thing.
So if I have the same monitor as you, we're going to get the same output whenever we play the same video. It's just going to show on the monitor the exact same. But if I go create another AI, I'm creating a slightly different monitor. Might be a little bigger, might be a little bit smaller. When we put the same inputs in, the different outputs are going to come out. So if you go to the same AI tool and you put the exact same prompt in and the exact same random number seed, sure, you can get the same thing out. But there's an infinite number of AI tools that you can create that are trained slightly differently that will give you different outputs. Even if you're using the exact same seed, the exact same training set, that is intentionality.
That's not because of the artist intervening. That different outputs are not because of the artist, though.
Yes, it
Of the
is. The
person
artist
writing the prompt,
intervening
no.
is the selection of the training set, the amount of training that he's doing, the data that he's putting in, the weights that he's assigning.
Yeah.
The artist is doing it when he's creating that weight. As soon as that
yeah,
AI is
if
put
you-
together,
Wait, if you train your own art database, I feel like maybe I would have to think on that. I don't have a fully formed opinion on that, but I feel like that feels different than somebody just rolling up to a pre-made thing and typing something in that somebody else could type that exact same thing in. If you train,
but
This goes back to the director comments and inputting
Yeah.
things that are already existing.
and I feel like,
But do you
Yeah, I
have to
feel like
make your own camera? Do you have to make your own camera to be an artist if you're to be a photographer? Like
no,
anybody
because
could
you
just
have much more
go.
control over you have much more of a hand in the end result than what you do with AI. And I feel like,
What do you mean? You just
How do
press
you
a
know
button?
that? Wait, how do you know that?
yeah,
It seems
because
like you
you're
could have
choosing the
way more
angle to
control with
focus,
AI.
you're choosing the lighting,
No, you're
you're
not.
zooming in.
If I do
You
everything
can
and
have
then
way
I
more
have
control
Case go
over
take the
AI
photo.
stuff.
You're making selections and intentional choices.
Yeah, but
can make
you would do that
AI.
with the prompt, right? You would make the selection based off of like, okay, I want this sort of image. I'm going to use this as the prompt, right? That's the same thing as setting up a
But what
camera,
makes it-
choosing the
but what
angle,
makes
choosing
it-
your
yes,
lighting.
I can see that. But what makes it different? How do you get the person's artistic experience when you're not putting any input in beyond words and somebody else can put in the exact same words? It's not
So-
going to filter the art the same way that
Well, somebody
any
else
other
can
art
come and
No,
set
no,
up
no,
the
no.
camera the
Like I
same
said,
way and
putting
press the button in the
input
same way and set up the lighting in the same way, right? It doesn't just because somebody else could do it doesn't mean that it's not art.
I think it's totally
Yes.
different with that. I think that's much more like you're much more involved in that process, and I think your intent is much more clear.
No,
than
but
someone
Pisco's not at
generating
all.
it
So I
randomly
set up
for
this
you.
camera. I spend like 12 hours getting this thing together, and then I have you, Pisco, and Destiny, and any of you can press the button when I tell you to press the button at the same time, and you're gonna get the same image out. And you have had no input to
Yeah,
that process, but because you're pressing the button, you're now the artist.
What do you mean you're now the artist?
So whoever presses the button to
So
take
here's
that
the
picture
like
is now the
the
artist.
the question that Rage Pop is asking essentially like
Kind of
when you
disagree
talk
with
about
that.
photography, right?
Yeah.
The photograph itself actually isn't art because that's just pushing a button. The art was the
Right.
inputs that went into
the
it.
choices.
Because like
It's the
thought
theoretically,
process and
yeah, if I
making the
put
shot.
all the work into setting up the perfect shot and then you came by and then you pushed the button, like, are you really the
Yeah.
artist? But then in that
Yeah.
case, if you're not,
Yeah,
even
I
though
would-
you're
I would
creating the same
think,
piece of
like-
art, we're like, yeah, it seems like something else is happening.
Yeah.
But then you still created art.
Or did you?
The same way that you making a copy is creating art, or
Yeah.
really
No,
what we
it's
think
not.
is what we think is the person who created the art was the person who had all the intention behind it, all the thought process.
No, I don't know why you guys keep
director of the
focusing
shot.
on intentionality as if it matters,
What else do you
right?
focus on?
Because intentionality has nothing to like. There was a very I forget
Wait,
the
wait, wait.
artist name, but there's an instance of a
It doesn't
photographer.
have to be like super meaningful intent, but I think
Well-
any intent to like create and display something, if I'm
But it's
even
not a
if the intent is just,
prerequisite.
like,
You
I'm
don't
just gonna
need
splash
intent.
this
Like
on here.
you could dig up old photos from a photographer that literally went through the city and like had a disposable camera and just like took random photos of the city, right? They didn't have
that's
any
intent.
any sort of like but they didn't have an artistic intent,
Not
right?
to the
That is an
specific
artistic
photograph,
intent.
but to the
If
process.
They decided to take
Okay, sure,
random
but-
pictures of the city. That is their artistic.
Okay, well,
intent.
what if they
What if it
go
went off
to what if they
accidentally?
go to take out the camera from their pocket and they accidentally took a photo, right?
Yeah.
And then what if you analyze that photo
That's
and then
cool,
oh
too.
my god, this is art. This looks beautiful, right?
That's
And
the
what if everybody else
experiencer
agrees?
case. No, that's the experiencer case.
Exactly.
where-
So the
Yeah.
artist's intention literally doesn't matter. It's all
No,
on
it
the
doesn't mean-
observer's
sorry,
end.
Just because
I think it can be
something
both.
is not the only way to do something, create art,
Yeah.
doesn't mean that like therefore.
Yeah, but
doesn't
I think
matter.
the
It
worry
could be
that
a
you get there-
sufficient condition to make art.
the worry-
that all you need is one person's artistic intent to have art.
Yeah, but the worry you get there then is that if an observer can decide something is art and an intender can decide something is art, then essentially everything that humans
We
observe can be
all
art.
are agreed on that. Wait, you must be
What,
agreed
you
on
need-
that.
you
if
just need
think
more
it's-
than one.
I do
nebulous.
agree, but I'm telling you that at that point you've got to the thing that upset you before, which is you've almost created like a definition where anything can be art, basically.
Wait,
I
here's
think
one. Is
anything
grave
can be art, but you need an experiencer. I think we have to agree that like experience and consciousness.
Yeah,
is
art without
required.
observation isn't art, right? Something needs to be observed for it to be art.
In which case, it's not literally meaningless. It means that if all sentient creatures were gone, there would be no art. That's some start.
Okay, if all
And now
sentient
we're
creatures disappeared
narrowing
though,
further.
wait, would there still be a tree in my backyard?
The
Are we
category of
realists?
tree,
Are trees
there would be a
sentient?
thing there, but the category of tree.
Okay, but there
I
would be
think
the
that
thing
you are
there. Okay,
stupid to-
gotcha.
The thing would be there, but the category I think would be rendered useless and nonsense. Like it would be nonsense. What does the category mean without someone
So-
to have it?
So I have a performance art question. So there was like the lady who went and said for like 6 hours, stood there and said, "You can do anything to me that you want," right?
Based.
So
Sorry.
all the people that came and did stuff to her, were they artists or were they creating art by interacting with her?
You can have joint
I think
authors.
it's collaborative art.
All-
Yeah.
there- yeah,
Oh, so then
works of-
why is an AI not collaborative art?
it can be?
What is no, I'm
If
not
you're
asking you. I'm
collaborating with
asking her.
another
She's saying
human,
it is.
You can't collaborate with a tool.
No, but you are. You're collaborating with a human who made that tool for you to use.
No.
No,
Wait, wait,
you're
wait, wait,
switching
wait.
the
What about a
definition at that
camera?
point.
What about a
Like you're
camera? Aren't you
saying
collaborating with a
collaborating
tool
with
to
the
make a picture with a camera as opposed to painting something?
I don't think so. I think you're using a tool. I don't think it's collaborating. I think that's entirely different. I think there's no intent on the basis of the tool. There's
Collaboration means you're implying some sort of artistic input from a third party,
Yes,
from
from both
some other
sides,
party,
yeah.
and that doesn't
Yeah.
exist by
And-
just using a tool. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways,
Wait, Pep, did you say you said you didn't think the Google image thing was art?
I think that if you broaden your definition of art to include that, then it kind of does become kind of too diluted to be useful.
Wait.
Okay,
come on.
wait,
Wait,
did
what do
you
you
say
mean?
that?
You are.
Wait, hold on. Did you
That
think
fits your
you said that collaging is art, right?
Yes.
Yeah. something.
Okay, is a
No.
Pinterest board art?
The one your mom made is.
Got him.
Oh my
You
god.
have to say yes if a collage is art. And then
Yeah,
just say-
yeah, I think so. Yeah.
yeah. So Google image search.
I mean, they're
the only
curators the same way. This is like the same thing as the DJ conversation, a little bit. You know, they're still using their intent, their tastes to curate something, and
Yeah, and that can be true of AI, just like it can be true of a Google search, or it can be true of me walking to pick up coffee.
So then again, what's the difference between like the the Google algorithm spitting out images and the AI tool spitting out images? Why
It's
is
literally not. You're the one who's trying to come up with a distinction there. The only thing that matters is the
it's just
intentionality.
Yeah.
so
You were the one
think that
struggling with this
AI art is art?
hypothetical for the last like 20 minutes.
Well, because you keep saying no, and then she keeps saying that AI art is an art.
No.
And when
I'm saying that if you broaden the definition to include things like Google image search, then you dilute the definition of art to like.
Okay,
the
but
point where it's
I'm
kinda
saying that you don't
meaningless,
have to
and I don't
because you have
want
originality.
to. What do
This
you
is why
mean?
I think that like outside of this conversation, and I think this is why people have been content to generally leave this topic alone. Outside of this like AI versus human things, nobody really asks the question of like, is this art or is this music? Like you can do it in a very esoteric or like I'm a very like whatever philosophical sense, but generally we all just kind of accept that like almost anything can be art. I think we don't usually we don't draw boundaries around it in real life.
Yeah, this is one of those instances where the answer is very not satisfying, so everybody wants to debate it constantly to get a satisfying answer, and you're never going to get it, right? I think that the best definition, the best definition of what is art is, unironically, like you know it when you see it, right?
No, I disagree with that. Hold on. I think that thinking of art as a label is a mistake. I think you have to think of art as a type of language, like a fluid language that conveys concepts.
So
it's not. Sorry, go ahead.
Like, what do you mean by that, though? Like, expand on that.
Like when we communicate to each other, right? We're not using the words, or I mean, we're using words. We're using tools to try to communicate inner thoughts that we have in our head, right, to another person. And the art does the same thing, right? It tries to convey something. It doesn't have to be intentional, but it's conveying something through some sort of medium to someone else.
Yes, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like the rules of it are really fluid, and we've discovered this throughout art. So thinking of it as a label doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Yes.
You have to think about it as a language.
Sure. I think that anytime in history anybody's ever asked the question of what is art, almost every single time somebody's doing that, they're trying to exclude something that they usually don't like, I think.
I mean, when people say that, is this art? They can mean one of two things. One is the kind of like, I don't know, existential question or the category question we're asking now, or is this good?
Yeah, that's essentially what people are usually getting at. Most of the time when people are like, is this
good framing? Because there's so much subjectivity into what's good art.
Well, that's the problem.
Can be, but that's
when most people
that's
ask,
when it's invoked, right?
Yeah, when most people ask that question, what is art? What you're really asking is, does this make me feel something, right?
Well, or is it profound?
I don't know. That's
people are kind of getting that, or they're asking this more broader question, which is, what does the category of art even mean? And it is broad, but it's not without its limits. And I don't think it's purely subjective, because I don't think art, just like any other word in the human language, is used by people to communicate ideas. It's an English word that,
but does it?
I mean, art is a word. It's a word.
Yeah, but like, if I say something to you, like, oh, this is art, like, I guess that's a question. When I say this is art, what am I communicating there?
I think the only good answer to this is when you're trying to say something is art, you're saying this is something you have to interpret in a different language, and that's the art language.
Well, no, but like let's say a little bit more grounded, because that's very vague. Let's say that I ask like 10 people what is art, and I get them to draw. They don't have to give me like an exact definition, but even like a tree of like related concepts or whatever. If I ask somebody what is art, I feel like I'm going to get enough words that are almost going to encompass all of human existence, right? Like some people might write down what?
One of the first ones would be like experience.
Yeah, it might be experience, it might be feeling, somebody might say sound, somebody might say painting, somebody might say image, somebody might say sense data as a human, somebody might say interpretation. Like, we're gonna get so many words, it's gonna encompass almost everything in the observable universe and everything that we experience subjectively as humans, right?
But there has to be some excluding principle. Something, you need to be able to say, like, when I communicate art, humans will understand that this is not art, right? When you talk, that is our experience day to day, where people don't walk around and say anything is art all the time.
But don't they? Isn't that exactly the types of?
No. Please go.
Some people that's the thing. That's what I mean. That's what I was saying earlier. How like we largely broadly agree to things, even if it is subjective.
Yeah, because I feel like when you say I feel like people exactly have done that for a long time, and that's always been the debate, right?
Yeah.
So here, I can give you a specific example of this is before the guy made the post, if I was just to say gravy gnome, it meant absolutely nothing. It was meaningless. It wasn't art at all. But now that someone made the post and added everything surrounding it to it, now there's an entire community where Gravy Gnome is now a meme.
Yeah.
It's a joke. Everything else, now that it's art, because everybody sees it as art, even though Gravy Gnome is actually retarded.
It signifies
because
that
we've
something has
assigned
happened.
value to it. Because we've added value to it, it's now art.
Yeah, it signified that transformation happened. That the word has now.
But was there any process?
There is a process. There literally was a process. People got together and agreed, or someone made that first whatever. I don't know what you're talking about, but whatever.
It's not
that thing
necessarily
is.
replicable, right? You can't necessarily replicate that process, though, right? It's not like a defined etched in stone process. It's just it's a phenomenon that happens.
It's not an incoherent phenomena where you don't see what's going on in the minds of people. What's happened in the minds of people are either one, someone is intending to put something into existence to share or not share, or just to for it to be in existence, some modicum of intentionality, or enough people are talking to each other and experiencing it and experiencing something that they perceive to be art, and that is it. Because otherwise, I mean, it's not occurring for a whole lot of different phenomena and stuff, and we have to be able, as language speakers, to distinguish it.
Yeah, I'm just saying that, like, you keep appealing to this language speaker, like having a definition of art is like vital to our navigation through the world. Like for things like water or for things like food, like I would agree, but for things like art, like it feels like people.
I don't want to have to do this with sandwich, dude. Like
I'm not saying with sandwich. Hold on, stop. I'm just saying that anytime this is invoked, it's literally to argue over what it is, right? Look at things like death grips. Like, oh, is this music? Does this count as real music? Or for painting, for Jason Pollock, for the Pollock paintings, is this even art? Is this even a painting? Like, whenever people are bringing up that concept, it's never for clarification. It's almost always used as an argumentative tool to like subjectively attack something. Like, when was the last time you heard somebody invoke this question, invoke the concept of art, when it wasn't to attack subjectively their aesthetic appreciation or lack thereof of something else?
I think almost always people say, is this even art? They're saying, do I like it? Is it evocative? And they're not asking the broader category question.
Yeah, but that shows then that your appeal to saying that, like, well, it's important that it means something. You're giving me an example right now. It doesn't. It's literally used to say something else.
A word can have multiple meanings, and one of the meanings of the way that will be invoked is something. Art is equivalent to good or profound or something that invokes emotion. When we all agree that there can be art that is totally boring, that invokes no emotion in 100% of humans that encounter it, even though it was intended to, even though everyone recognizes it as art, that these are just two different ways that we use the word. But right now, you guys happen to be having a conversation about the category question and what even is art. And on that question, I think you need to be able to communicate with other human beings. And the truth is, when we're asking what art is, you're asking whether there is some intentionality in its creation, I think, right? Or whether some group of people are experiencing it. And anything more specific than that, I agree, is too narrow.
Sure, and I agree with what you just said, but I mean, that what you just gave is, if that doesn't encompass the entire observable universe, it's like right up to the edge of encompassing it. Because you just said it's like whatever somebody could perceive as something.
No, whatever someone does perceive, whatever people do perceive, not could. So when you pee
okay,
this morning,
well, if you invoke anything,
morning?
What?
Did you pee this morning?
Sure.
Do you perceive your pee as art?
Personally, no.
Did you intend for it to be art?
Personally, no.
So I think we all agree that your pee this morning wasn't art.
I disagree.
Wait, is that true?
I think it is art. If you think from an artistic lens, you can make it art.
Yeah, I think that's the issue.
That's why I think it's a language.
Do you actually,
like a person that only speaks Mandarin, if they see the Spanish word agua, like that doesn't mean anything to them. But if they switch to a Spanish speaking perspective, it suddenly means something. I think the art works the same way.
Can you, sorry,
loser,
say that another way, would you mind?
So I think that art functions as a language. So I think that like you can view some things, it's a really weird language because it can interpret anything. So like if you only spoke Mandarin, where the characters are nothing like the romanticized languages, you can't when you see Spanish words, you can't conceptualize them. But when you switch to a Spanish lens, when you learn Spanish, those things suddenly gain meaning. And I think you do the same thing with art. I think once you turn your artistic lens on, you turn on your artistic language, you can start interpreting things in a very fluid way. And that's
you
what
saying
makes...
it's all about communication and in a mode of language is making it more narrow than anyone else has today. What you're saying is that art is a kind of way to communicate ideas and to communicate, because language is a method of communication. And so what you're saying is art is even more narrow. Art is the language of communicating concepts and feelings. And that implies that intentionality, right?
No, because
he's not implying intentionality. He's implying relationship that could be invoked at any point in time. That the language creates a relationship between observer and thing that's being observed, right?
Or even just concepts, right? Like, so if we take somebody like what's that Cage guy, guys? He has a piece where he. Yeah,
Johnny Cage.
He has a piece. Yes, Johnny Cage. He has a piece where he literally plucks cactuses that he's hooked up to like electricity, and that's how it generates sound. And it sounds like shit. Anybody listening to that is probably going to walk away saying like, yeah, that's probably not music, right? But I think Sejin's onto something in that you can analyze something through an artistic lens and say, all right, using these characteristics or like using like these concepts, I can analyze this as art because it meets a certain criteria, right? I can listen to it and be like, okay, these frequencies are somewhat musical in some senses, right? The rhythm in which he plucks it is somewhat rhythmical. It has some sense of musicality to it, right?
As according to whom? As according to either the person who made it or the people who hear it.
The people who hear it, because they're the ones using that turn on the lens.
Wait, so the subjectivity is the only thing that matters? So someone who intends to make art, but no one else thinks it.
No, the observation of something. That person is the person that gets to decide if that is art or not to them. They don't get to decide it for anybody else.
No. The mistake there is labeling anything as art in the first place. Anything can be art when you're looking at it through an artistic lens.
Yes,
well, if it's
exactly. You can analyze anything as art.
If you have an intent and a creative process, I think that's enough to make art, even if no one else thinks it's art.
If no one,
but then if you create something through an artistic lens, then you're also receiving it through an artistic lens.
Wait.
Yes,
I just want to make sure I heard that. If no one thinks something is art, it can be art.
Yes.
No. If nothing observes it,
it could be. Yes.
No, it is. The intent and the creative process is there.
Wow.
Sorry,
I would argue it wouldn't even matter.
The person who created it, right? The person who created it doesn't think it's art. No one who observes it thinks it's art. Is there any situation where
he thinks it's art because the intent is to create art, but then everyone else looks at it and says, no, sorry.
Then I'm asking a slightly different question, which is, if it's the case that the person who created something didn't intend for it to be art and no one else perceives it as art, could that thing be art?
Yes,
no.
Because I'd say yes, because I don't think there can exist something that cannot be art.
Damn.
Art is useless, and this is a
regardless of whether or not the
art is not useless. Art is a language we can use to
but you said
wrestle with certain concepts,
even if nobody thinks it is.
Think about
how is that not
give
useless?
me any sort of example, right? If you look at it through an artistic lens, you can find something a concept to wrestle with internally.
But you can't, because you said no one does.
Somebody doesn't mean you can't or couldn't.
Wait, Sejin, are you just saying that like not everything is art, but anything could potentially be art?
I'm saying everything has an artistic value, whether or not you see it or not.
Yes.
Yeah, it could.
Yes.
Yeah, I would say.
But that value is totally dependent on people's minds, right? And
well, yeah, but you would have to lay out like okay, so this is a big thing with art critique, right? Art critique means nothing in a vacuum, obviously, right? In order for a critique of art to mean something, you have to lay out your criteria or your reasoning for why you're critiquing.
Wait. Hold on, wait. Just real quick, be very careful. When we talk about art critique, we are usually talking about evaluating oftentimes like objective measures of like a piece of art. Or it could be a subjective enjoyment.
It could be this.
Hold on, let me finish.
It could be.
It's an objective measure of piece of art. So like how many instruments are used, or it could be the subjective enjoyment of that piece. But it is very rarely, if ever, the evaluation of is it art. Very rarely is a subjective critique trying to figure out is this music or is this a movie or is this art. That's never the question generally.
Right, but I'm saying in the same way that you would lay out your reasoning for justifying your critique, you would then lay out your reasoning for why you think something is art or why you perceive something to be art.
and say everyone disagrees with you, and never like no,
It doesn't matter.
I mean,
you don't need a consensus for something to be felt as or viewed as art.
Hang on, like no, you are the only person who thinks that this thing is art. It's an old shoe. And everyone's like, I don't know what you're doing. You're just looking at an old shoe. That's not art. And no one agrees with you. You think that in the human language, as we use the term art, notwithstanding the fact that in this own person's subjective, idiosyncratic opinion, it's art. But notwithstanding that, you think that is art as we understand it as a humanity.
Yes.
Just because
I think the shoe is made with intentionality in a creative process in order to form a certain image.
None of that's required.
You guys would never say this
of
you guys would never say this of any other word. And I know Steven's gonna get, but let me finish it before I'm gonna have to go in a bit. If I were to say like everyone's definition of like sandwich is a certain thing, certain kinds of things within bounds, and someone's like, well, I think that shoe's a sandwich. You would never say like, well the shoe's subjectively it is a sandwich to him. You know, he perceives it to be a sandwich, and so who are we to say that that's not a sandwich?
Because I'm taking art, the word art, the concept art, and I'm elevating it to the same level of language, right?
You're just playing category games. You can just define a category to be anything and redefine it in a way that it doesn't have any social meaning anymore, but it does have private meaning to you, which is just playing retarded.
Yeah, what we're talking about is private language and proprietary.
No. The problem with your analogy is that you're taking like a noun that is set to describe a certain thing that we all understand what that thing is, and then you're taking a concept like art and of trying to apply it in a way that's analogous.
Well, no. So the difference is he's talking about the concept of a sandwich versus the concept of art, and what you're saying is true. But the difference is that like the concept of sandwich is vital, whereas the concept of art is like almost nebulous on purpose, right? Like
exactly.
What is a sandwich is important because we need to know what we can eat or not. What is art is not really that important because it's actually almost completely irrelevant to our subjective enjoyment of any particular piece of art. So I think there's a difference in
I think the same thing could be true of like, I don't know, loud, right? Loud. Think about loud. What does loud mean? Loud means, you know, we could all have a subjective understanding of loud, true, but is the sound of like a little piece of fluff landing on the ground, would we ever say, well, you know, it's loud? Even though all of us are in agreement, like 99% of us, except for those with super Spider-Man hearing, agree that it's not loud. Would we ever say that that's a loud sound?
Nope.
Yeah, I think it's the same kind of thing with all these categories.
No, that's way different because loud tends to describe like an actual sensory feeling, right? Like pain, right? Like I would say loud is like a type of sensation, and that's gonna be one of the few things that we can.
How about we do beautiful? Beauty is very often in the eye of the beholder, right? Everyone says that, and everyone agrees that there's a private, personal, subjective concept of beautiful. But are you going to tell me that there's not like that we can't agree on some things that are more sort of universally understood to be beautiful? And when we communicate things, that those
that's
things
what I was saying earlier, how
are expressed.
Like there's no hard and fast rules, but a lot of people can largely agree on broad kind of definitions.
Yes, I mean the same thing with healthy. Something is healthy or not. Would anyone think that like someone who's about to die in a minute, is that healthy?
Well, it depends on why they're going to die.
Well, they because they have punctured
Cancer.
lungs. They have
to this
cancer.
conversation.
They have everything. They have everything bad about them. Is that person healthy?
No, but if they're totally fine and healthy otherwise, and in 1 minute I'm going to put a bullet through their head, well then I would say yes, they're healthy, even though they're going to die in a minute.
I'm at peace. I'm healthy because I value. 1 minute to me is like 100,000 years, and I really think that this isn't really even a problem. So again,
he's assigning his own private definition of healthy, and as opposed to a public definition of healthy.
But but the difference is that art is broadly agreed. Like we've all kind of agreed on. Like there typically isn't much challenge to the category of healthy. There is so much challenge, even within art, to what is art.
Bro, you just had a million billion debates about.
Don't bring up the Nazi shit. Are you really going to compare these two things?
Wait, no. The vaccine. and people's relative risk of like myocarditis and the risk that they put to
Bro,
different
this
things,
is
like what they perceive to
no.
be
Hold
healthy.
on. To make this conversation equivalent, it would have to be people saying, "Oh, I think eating shit could make you healthy," or "Oh, maybe cutting off your arm could make you healthy," or "Oh, having cancer." No. We broadly agree 97%. Actually, even with the anti-vaxxers, we agree on what healthy is. They just disagree on the fact of the matter what the vaccine does. If they agreed that the vaccine like prevented you from getting diseases, they say, "Oh, that's healthy."
That's
not a discussion on what is
the only
healthy.
consensus I'm appealing to. But there are some things that there is so little people calling that thing art, and there was no intention behind its creation, that we would feel comfortable saying, just like we would say that that's not healthy, despite your private language.
Yeah, but as not to appeal to the
art. No one.
Hold on, wait. I will. This is the only time I can ever invoke my education, because it never comes up ever. But as somebody that's gone through art school, or at least 3 years of it, I would never challenge anybody on it ever, because it always leads to autistic conversations like this. Anytime anybody ever in a fucking art school were to say, like, I feel like that's a piece of art, nobody, except for maybe a freshman, would be like, I don't think that's art, because they know they're about to get dogpiled by 50 million upperclassmen who are like, oh, really? Or some pretentious grad student. Oh, you don't think that's art? Oh, well, what do you think is art? The saxophone world is Kenny G art? Oh, do you think that's like everybody's gonna smooth jazz art? Like everybody's gonna talk. And then at the end of that conversation of getting gangbanged, you're gonna be like, okay, yeah, fuck. I'm never gonna say that's not art again, because I'm never going to be able to.
What about your toe fungus?
We're going to say all the same shit. The ash of the person that was in Auschwitz, is that art? Like, I don't know.
No. But that one, might be. But the toe fungus, where you don't intentionally create it, and no one perceives it. There's no world in which you say that's art, right? Unless you are perceiving it.
What about the flashes of people in Hiroshima? Is that art?
NFTs.
Wait, Pisco, I have a question. So why okay, so would you say that the problem with the definition of art that we're trying to put forward is too nebulous, therefore useless? Like, is that your general argument?
It's useless because it's because everything is art, right?
Okay, so here
the difference.
Everything is art.
Let's assume that we agree on a definition.
Well, Rage, but hold on. The argument isn't everything is art. It's everything could be art. Right.
On that we're agreed, right? Because as long as there are sufficient minds for us to, for there to be creativity intentionality about creation, or people to experience things, I think I would say that anything could conceivably be art, but not everything is art.
Yeah. So it seems like go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so is your problem the subjectivity of the definition of art in and of itself? Like, are you trying to find an objective way to define art?
No. I'm trying to say that our words need to mean things, and to mean things, they need to exclude certain categories of things. And I'm not telling you to draw the line precisely, but at the very least, we should agree on the kinds of things that we look to when we're deciding if things. I would say
that how do you distinguish AI art from actual
wait, shut up, Rach. But before we even start talking about AI, we need to talk about the definition of art and what Pisco's problem is with it, right? So the thing is that you said what was the very last thing that you said?
I said that at the very least we should agree on the kinds of things that we're looking to see if humanity would see this as art.
Yeah, you were trying to say that if we put forth the definition, it has to necessarily exclude other things. Otherwise, it becomes useless and too nebulous, right?
Yes, and there needs to be ways to distinguish this is art, this is not art.
So would you say that the definition that we conventionally use or understand as art right now, do you think that is too nebulous or meaningless?
No, I think it's fine. I think most people, live their day-to-day life experience and their art definition is fine, and we appeal. I think that they're using the term art to mean specific things, and they're referencing creation and experience. Those are the things that they seem to be referencing. And so I think that perfectly maps on. But if it's purely subjective, in which case, like any speck of dust that one person thinks is art makes it art, then now it's too loose for me. I think that's too subjective.
Well, I think that the art community, or just people that engage in art, generally speaking, I'm going to make a broad claim here, but most people operate with this definition of art is subjective. You kind of just know it when you see it, and most people don't operate with this like trying to qualify what is art with specific qualities or things that you experience or whatever, right? And that's the thing, is that like you're trying to play this word game and say like, okay, well, if it can mean anything, or it doesn't exclude anything, then it's nebulous. But like this definition of art, like the way that we use the word art has meaning and it has like functionality as we use it right now, and it is nebulous the way that we use it, even within that.
I agree, it's broad, but I don't think it's nebulous. So I'll approximate and try to see if I'm understanding correctly what your guys' definition is, which is anything is art that at least one person thinks is art. Is that the definition of art?
No, you need to stop using it as a label.
Stop. I'm asking Mind Waves, Destiny,
no.
and Rage. Is your definition of art anything that one conscious human mind thinks is art?
No.
It could be, but no.
Is it a sufficient condition for something to be art that any one mind perceive it to be art?
No.
Okay, then that seems totally at odds with what you guys have been saying for the past.
No, it has not at all.
30 minutes.
Well,
I
can perceive a chair as a tree. It doesn't make it that thing, right? Like, so like whether or not somebody could perceive something as something is kind of like besides the point if we're trying to define what is something.
Yeah, so if any one person does perceive an object as art, it is art.
No.
So that's what I'm arguing against.
No, I think the distinction is just that anything could be perceived as art if you perceive it that way.
Yeah, so I'm saying that it's not enough for me to be like, okay, that's art just because one human mind perceives it to be art or affirms it.
Well, yeah, but then we go back to, it's subjective. I can think it's art because I'm perceiving it in a different way, right? But you are going to maybe perceive it in a different way.
But that's private language, right? That's private language.
Yeah, and that's how, like, what's the problem with that, though?
Well, I think there's a lot of problems with private language because we're trying to get to mutual understandings, and I think
the only area that it's a problem is when you start taking these very niche, obscure, outside, like we're on the edges of like what is art or like the category of art, right? Like for 99.9999% of things, we can categorize of like the word art has meaning when we're trying to look at something or use it in that context, right? Okay, so what you're doing is because we can't define this one thing that is very niche and abstract, and therefore the word's meaningless. It's like
Destiny's going to say no. Destiny's going to say no.
Wow.
Do you is there a definition for art that you think is a good definition for art?
There is no good definition for art. No. That's why I said you know it when you see it. That's like the best way that you could possibly describe it.
Who knows it when it sees it?
The observer, any observer, you, me, anybody.
Wouldn't it be so? Then it would be correct then that if any person sees something and knows it to be art, it is art.
To them, subjectively, not objectively.
Wait, Pisco, do you think that something could be art, but you also think it's bad art?
Yes.
Wait, Little Tojo, how do you feel about this?
I can't believe I'm still here.
Okay, I was just curious.
Yeah, no, this is retarded. This is so fucking retarded.
Whoa, hey,
based. Actually based.
I'm so sorry. I totally forgot we're not supposed to say that.
No,
remedial.
Yeah, I'm just gonna
remedial art.
Remedial.
This is remedial art class.
Not actually even worse. Destiny, you said remedial is actually worse than retarded.
Yeah,
I said it again. I'm sorry.
Wait, Steven, before I leave, I have to leave now.
Yeah, what's up, babe?
I just want to get your opinion. Do you think the definition for art, would you agree with the definition that said anything that any one person perceives as art is art?
It would have to be.
All right. Good talk, guys. This was a really fascinating conversation.
This was not. This was not good. No.
Oh, I had fun. I know everyone else who got frustrated.
Wait, Pisco, before you go, you think that's an insane metric? Like, yeah, I do. So my kid draws something. They scribble something. I'm a parent. I'm like, oh, okay. I think this is art. You would say like no or what?
No. I think that there's a carve out for the creator. If someone is intending to put something into existence, regardless of what everyone else thinks, I think that when people talk, they're either referencing that act of creation, that modicum of intentionality, which would be totally, inclusive of a child drawing something, or they're referencing the experiential side, where it wouldn't be enough for me for one person to think it, but it would on the creativity side, because I think that's how people talk.
Yes,
Okay.
that's exactly.
I feel like when you use the word art, we're invoking a whole family of concepts, and we're leaving the door open for the other person to even add to it. I think that's like the challenge, is that art is not already, it's not only is it already incredibly broad, but we're almost inviting another person by even saying the word art to adding to it at the same time. So that's why I think it's hard. If somebody, like, again, it's the dream of like every art student when you're in a debate with somebody to be able to say, well, that's not even art. Like everybody wants to be able to say that. And everybody's had an argument at some point, if they've gone to any type of art school where they want to argue like anime's not art or this isn't art or blah, blah. But like you can't do it because people will start to endlessly challenge you on a definition and you can never solidify anything down.
Yeah,
That's just
art is also very like culturally rooted as well, right? Like what we understand as being art, it depends on like where you're at like in time and place as well. Like for a long time, music created using like digital means wasn't considered music, right? But like after a while, it's normalized and seen as more of a tool, and then now we all recognize it to be music, right?
Well, look at the
Obviously.
fighting right now that's going on with animators. Is CG anime? Does that even count? A lot of people don't like CG anime.
This is, I think it's a little bit of a, I don't know, equivocation of terms, because I think what they're getting at is the other question. It's the question of, is it good? Is it worthwhile? Is it, you know, does it evoke the same thing? Is it the same quality? Which is not the category question, which I think
Maybe.
might be what people are getting at. And then there are other, I guess, subsidiary questions where I think are more interesting are the, should we protect AI art or should we fight it? Which maybe you guys would have talked about if I hadn't bogged it down.
Okay.
Bye, Pisco.
Later, guys.
Bye, Pisco.
Love you, buddy.
Bye, Pisco.
All right,
Steven, do you
so,
not like my definition?
Not particularly. I don't think it's bad. It's fine.
I want to try to push you on this. Can you
Well,
describe
hold on, wait,
something
before we
that's
do this, because Pep actually organized a chat with me, and she got
Sorry.
like fucking forgetted by a million other people. Sorry.
Oh, I was just drawing, so I was listening. I was listening to the cast. I feel like nobody kind of agrees with my point of there's not actually enough. There's not a like enough of a distinguishable difference in terms of having an artist's like intent put into the AI art with the current setup.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody agrees with me on that, and I think that's kind of my sticking point about
So
like
then-
why this is so different from every other kind of art, and being like, I don't think like if there's no measurable difference between what one person can enter, and if two people enter the exact same thing, beyond that entry of the words, there's going to be nothing that influences the outcome of the art. None of their preferences, none of their skill, nothing like that. And I feel like people don't agree with me on that.
So then is Banksy art? Do you consider Banksy art?
Yeah, why?
Okay, well, do you know that it's actually a person doing it, or is it a robot doing it behind the scenes and then being put out wherever?
If it's a robot doing it behind the scenes, either a human is controlling it to do that, or this is getting back.
No, it's an AI. We have a super advanced AI made by DARPA. It's sitting in a lab. How do you know that that's not the case?
Is it sentient?
No, it's not sentient. It's just a DARPA thing that
I think
it knows
before
what
this-
it's going to evoke things.
Yeah, real quick before this ventures off into this 72-hour
seems like
debate
it's gonna get back into
yeah, it's
chaos,
going
yeah.
right back to where you guys were before. My feeling of things, this is how I felt about this, and nothing has budged me from this yet, is I feel like as we develop more and more sophisticated artificial intelligences that are more generalized and less specific, I think that what I feel is happening for humans is our minds are not as unique as we want them to be, and that we like our minds are unique in terms of what exists on this planet right now, but in that uniqueness, we feel that not only are they currently unique, they could never be duplicated. No amount of machinery could ever duplicate it. And over time, we've seen machines make big strides in replacing humans in a lot of areas. They do math faster than us. They can sometimes solve problems in creative ways that we can't. They've assisted us even in things like art. But there's one thing that a human brain can do that machines can never do, and that's inspiration and innovation and creativity. These have been traditionally considered the domain of human, and art and no amount of machine shit can ever touch it, because that's a unique special thing that is like a priori granted to us as humans. But the problems that we're starting to see are that maybe that creative process that we feel like is the amalgamation of some special unquantifiable human experience that exists, that's a greater sum of all of the abstract is greater than all the sum of our parts, is something that we can't quantify, is being quantified now in incredibly complicated and highly sophisticated machine learning programs. And when we see that happen, we don't want to believe that that can happen. So we start to arbitrarily increase the complexity and the threshold for what it means to be art and all of this, because we want to feel like we're holding on to something that still makes us unique and human. That's the feeling that I get.
Some people might be doing that, but that is not at all my intent here. I feel like what makes humans like artistic in particular is pretty quantifiable, and
So what is that quantity?
Some is mysterious. The things that I've been saying, the preferences and traits and skills you develop over time.
Yeah, but even at that, like I could wait, hold on. I just want to run this down real quick without 50 million interruptions, okay?
Yeah.
So when you talk about experiences, right?
Mm-hmm.
All of that can be programmed, right? Have you seen the movie Blade Runner 2049?
No.
Okay, there's like a guy that walks around, he looks and talks and acts like a human or whatever, but he's not sure if he's a human because he doesn't have like memories. He doesn't know if he ever existed as a human, and he was made into a robot or something like that, basically, right? But the question is like, well, what makes him human? What is human? Do memories make you human? Do subjective experience? Because subjective like feelings, those can be programmed. You can control like input and monitor for, temperature, for vision, for sounds. Like these things are all data points that can be.
But we're not there yet.
Well, but that's kind of the question, right? Because the question is are
we're absolutely, the AI generators are not, they don't have
you can
feelings.
say that and you can laugh, but the reality is even artists, even fucking AI people, well, maybe not super into AI people, but everybody is shocked because the level of art that is coming out from AI generators today, I know this, everybody thought that this was impossible 10 years ago. If you would have shown people that you could input some crazy random string of text and you could get out a novel piece of artwork drawn in a stylistic sense that seems like inspired and human, everybody 10 years ago would have said, that's impossible, that will never happen. And now we're there. So to say that like, oh no, it's a totally different process.
But we're not there yet to the like having it be the same as a human experiencing and creating art. It's not. It does not.
For purposes of like a Turing test, you wouldn't know, right? I could show you different pieces of art, and you'd have no idea if it's AI inspired or not. You could proxy it with like the finger thing or whatnot. But if I'm giving you like pictures of scenery, whatever, it would be flawlessly past the Turing test of art, right?
I guess so. If you want to put it that way, But then again, so does a photocopy.
Well, no, the thing is that you were going to say, well, you're basically making the argument that, well, the AI art isn't compelling enough, right? But the thing is, it obviously is. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Otherwise, artists wouldn't feel threatened or like be upset about this subject, right? AI art has reached a point where it's compelling enough to pass as art. And that's why this is a discussion.
Yeah, I can say that it's compelling enough to pass as art. I think the reason for this discussion, like what interests me about it is what makes it art and what makes it like why human art. None of this would be able to be created in the first place without human art. But really, what fascinates me about all this.
Wait, I'm sorry, because you keep saying these statements that are that apply to humans too. You keep saying none of this can be created without human art. None of the art that exists today as humans can be created without prior human art. Nothing can be, right? So everything so a lot of the statements and critiques you're making of AI are equally created by are equally critiquable by humans. The music we have today doesn't exist.
AI, because of how AI functions, it's not human. It doesn't learn the same way humans do.
I guess that's just a part that we disagree with, because I feel like the learning process is almost identical. Like
it is not at all.
But what is the difference? Because all you're going to do is your answer to this, and try to answer it in a way that's different. Because it feels like every time I push you on answer this, what you're going to give me an answer of is, well, it's different because, and then you're going to say humans have a broader data set. But I could give it a
broader data set, and it's filtered through that. It's not just.
But hold on, what does that mean?
It's filtered, not just a one-to-one input.
AIs are not one-to-one input output. Maybe like 5 years ago they would have.
No. But it's inputting art and that's it. It's inputting art and photos, and then like the dude said earlier, you can weight things certain ways. I know that like DALL-E, or actually I think it was DALL-E or was it Midjourney, who was trying to weight things to be more what's the word? Inclusive.
Yeah, everything you're saying humans do. We weight things different ways. All of we're going by is the inputs of things that we've seen. You can't ask a person that's never seen a tree before to draw a tree. They can't do it. They need a series of inputs as well.
Mm-hmm. But the outcome that they're going to generate is going to be different based on who they are and their experiences.
Yeah, which is the same thing as the data sets for an AI thing. The database.
If you're talking about different data sets and people training the AI themselves, I would probably have a different argument.
Well, yeah, but the only difference then between the AI and the people is there are more people than AIs. Like if I made 5 million different iterations of AIs that all trained off of different training data sets, would you all of a sudden be okay with it?
I would call you an artist in that case if you were training them, if you were creating them, if you were structuring, if you were making those choices. It's the intent on your part there. Whereas it's not the intent on people like just using it. Just random users don't have any input in that way.
I don't know if I believe that 100%. You're saying that if a person created a data training set that included copyright works and all the things that are currently triggering artists, but if
I would say it's unethical, but I would say that it's their intention in choosing that is more present than when people just use Midjourney or DALL-E.
Well, when you say that it's unethical, would it be unethical for a human to practice off of like copyright material?
No, because humans learn different from AI.
How in what meaningful way?
Because everything you learn is filtered through like your preferences. When I learned how to draw bodies, I liked learning to draw women because I think women are prettier.
But
all these things are going to be
all of these preferences could be
distinct to a person.
Yeah, but all of these preferences could be programmed to a machine. Like I want you to.
Are they?
They could be. Well, yeah, and for some of these.
But they aren't right now.
Wait, so if I give a preference to a machine to have a preference for white people and softer figures, is all of this okay now for you because I gave it a couple of preferences?
No, because it's not, unless you're the person also doing the prompts. I don't feel like it's, I want the artist's experience and what their preferences are and their artistic vision to be actually evidenced in the end result.
Where did your preferences for women come from?
What do you mean?
Well, you're saying the AI's preferences came from another human, therefore it's like invalid. But I'm curious, like, where did your preferences for drawing women come from?
What do you mean? I think it's invalid for one person to. I think it's like the thing before that we were talking about collaboration-wise, how collaboration implies active participation, and one person designing something and another person using it isn't the same as collaboration.
Okay. Don't think that answered my question, but that's okay.
Oh,
Whatever.
It didn't, but I just had an issue with you saying that I didn't think that a human choosing it, that doesn't disallow it. It just means that I only think it's should be considered for the person that made it, not just a random prompter. Sorry, restate your question again, though. What was the question?
All I was trying to get at is that your argument was that, like, your art is special because you have a preference for women. And I was curious, like, where do you think that preference came from? Do you think it came from like does it matter?
My life experiences, I don't know, like just
things. It came from a training set, the data set, right? Yeah. Which is the collective experience of your life, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Which current AI models don't have.
Okay, well, I think that's Destiny's argument, is that like their training set is other data, which is like their.
Well, and also I think that
have the art pieces.
I think that the AI do have these preferences. Like the AI that exists today is incredibly sophisticated. It's not just copy pasting parts of images to each other.
This is the same thing with statistics, though. No, the only reason it has preferences is because of how humans generate things. It can show a preference for like big titty anime girls in certain sectors because people generate a lot of big titty anime girls. But that's not the machine having a preference. That's people having a preference.
Yeah, but now we get into weird deterministic things where, like, do people have preferences or do their parents have preferences they give to them, right? But I don't know. Hold on, I'll be back a second.
So I'm going to go to this is where I was trying to lead to is like, yeah, where do preferences come from? And like that whole deterministic thing that you're about to go on. Yeah. Like unironically, I believe in destiny kind of because like, I believe like we don't make decisions. Like I don't believe in free will.
I think the point you're trying to make, and maybe I'm wrong, is that like you're trying to point towards the fact that it doesn't really matter where these preferences come from, right? Is that like that that Pep over here is trying to be super discriminatory about like what preferences matter when it comes to AI art. But like you yourself as a human probably don't even know where your artistic preferences come from, right? Like this isn't something that we don't like look at human art, like or art created by humans with the same sort of discriminatory lens.
Yeah, like to me, at the end of the day, it's just ones and zeros, and like that might sound like a meme, but I kind of truly fucking believe that. Yeah, like it's just math. At the end of the day, human preferences, robot preferences, it doesn't matter.
You know what? I kind of almost agree with this. I feel like life is like a series of logic puzzles where like input A ends up resulting in like output B, things like that. But I feel like that actually contributes to my point more, I guess.
So I have a question for you, Pep. I guess two questions. So one, say I had a tool, I could stick this on your head, and it could read your thoughts. And then there would be like a robot in the other room that would make whatever piece of art that you had, right? So if you wanted to make a sculpture, it would go to the marble block and cut it out. If you wanted to paint, it had all the oils available. Is that art?
Yeah, because it's taking the visualizations from your brain, right? That's what your brain is coming up with.
Okay, sure. So, but then now, what if we have a generator, right? That can generate all of these images that you've created, and it's already created that thing that you've created. Is that
So then
has that made art before you?
No, I don't think so. I think that's what's different is like human purpose.
So if you have the exact same outcome,
like a.
So if you have the exact same outcome,
would have the exact same outcome is the thing.
No. I'm saying it actually has, because we have an infinite number of rooms, and it's put every single possible output. That's possible.
I mean, this is the whole like monkeys writing Shakespeare thing, though, right?
Sure. Yes.
Yeah.
So, Pop, is your issue with it that like AI art is devaluing the experience of artists, like true artists, in your mind?
No, I just think it's the issue I have with it. The actual issue I have with it is I think that most current AI models are unethical because they took art, like they're all trained on a training database that was made for research, and so they didn't filter out like art that is copyright that people didn't want to have put in that. And I feel like that's the problem I have with it. But the technology itself, I don't actually have that much of a problem with. I think it's cool. I just don't think it makes people an artist the same way if I downloaded a bunch of cheats and speedran a game. I don't think it would make me a speedrunner. You know?
Well, but it is. Like, there's a tool-assisted speedrunner category.
Yeah, yes, but then it would be defined as that. I can say AI. I'm happy with calling it AI art, but I'm not calling it the same thing as like.
Okay, so then I guess my next question is, how do you discriminate AI art from regular art? If I showed you 30 pictures, do you think you could tell me which ones came from AI and which ones came from people?
Well, it's kind of there's like that's like the difference between digital and traditional art. Some people make digital art that looks exactly like watercolors.
You're treating it as two different categories when in actuality AI art would be a subcategory of art.
Well, it would just be the same thing. It'd be indistinguishable. If I was to create a watercolor painting robot,
indistinguishable is a thing, I guess.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, if it's indistinguishable, if you can't tell the difference, well, then why does it matter at all and not call it art?
Because I think people want a lot of like protections assigned to it. Like there were people who were. I think this is a fringe case. I think this is a super fringe case. There were people who were like complaining about people stealing their prompts, and they were like trying to like say they had copyright rights to prompts and stuff, and I feel like that's wild.
I don't think it's copyright infringement to create derivative works off of other copyright images. It's not.
Yeah.
As long as it's sufficiently distinct, you can use other things as references, the same way that AI does when it trains. It's not copyright infringement to use a copyrighted image in your training model set. So it would be.
Actually, there's been like they're debating this right now, whether that only applies to human generated works or AI generated works. And I think I agree with the human generated works part, because again, the intent, the selection, choosing which things are combined, choosing the differences, I think is important. I think that
but the AI is choosing the differences and choosing how to do things. I think that you're getting.
I think that's just that's a more like copying version than what a.
But how is it copying? When the AI trains on your image, what is it creating?
It's
like
making,
what is?
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, so like what exactly is the AI doing? So it takes your image and then it does what with it? Does it just store your image forever?
No. What do you mean destroy the image forever?
No. Stores your image forever.
Oh, no. From what I understand, no. It just learns things like when words are like this, images usually look like this, and these things appear next to each other, or these pixels look like this, and so on and so forth.
Okay, so is that, how unique would you say that is from your image? Like if I use your image to, I don't know, predict whether something is a line or not, is that sufficiently unique from your image?
I'm sorry, a line? Like, what do you mean? They're the
I take your image.
Programs that define. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah. So I take your image. I mark like 50 things that are lines on your image, right?
Okay.
And now my AI predicts whether or not something is a line. Is that a sufficiently differentiated outcome than your image?
That's not an outcome. That's just it learning, though. And that's different from how humans learn.
Sure, but the case for copyright is whether or not something is sufficiently differentiated from whatever the original is.
And I feel like copyright law isn't really designed for this. We've never had anything like this. So just because something is happening on like a super granular and large scale in an automated process, I don't think that makes it right.
Okay, so then you're saying that you're undergoing copyright infringement, but not under any definition that we have, and that even though you're creating a significantly differentiated product, that you just feel like it shouldn't
AI
be.
is creating it.
Yes, the AI. Well, no, a human is telling the AI what to use to create something. So a human is involved in that process.
But it doesn't actually influence the end result nearly as much.
Yes, it does.
No, not the only way you're influencing the end result is with the initial prompt. Nothing else.
No. When you're creating the AI from the beginning.
Wait. Oh, yeah. If you're, like I said before, if you like design and curate your own AI training data, I would be much more inclined to call that art. I think there's a lot of intentionality and decision.
No, this isn't art. This is copyright infringement. So when I am training my AI using copyrighted images, you said that was a violation of the copyright holder's intellectual property.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I feel like most AI made by the current generators is unethical because of that reason.
Okay, well, I'm asking you now, what specific part of that process is violating a copyright? Because what you're creating is just rules. Those are unique and derived rules.
Money for it. Whereas when a person makes those choices for themselves and trains something themselves, I feel like there's a lot more intentionality there. I feel like there's
so charging money for something.
In terms of I think it's a little bit more nebulous in terms of whether it's bad or unethical or copyright infringement. But I think there would be a lot more room to argue that it's not, because a human is intervening and making all those selections and curating and things like that.
Okay, so we're not even in the creation of the art out of it process. We're in the I have your images and now I'm going to create the AI process.
Okay, so people having like access to images, I mean, people can collect images for private use, but if you like hosted an event and displayed them on a screen, you could get in trouble and that would.
Do you think an AI is displaying your image on a screen for other people in the same way that pirating a video is displaying it for other people?
I feel like there are parallels there.
So what is the parallel?
The parallel is that somebody's art was taken to create something without their consent, and it wouldn't be able to create the things it's creating without that initial art that was given with consent.
On the second half, yes, we can have just artificially generated shapes and images, and then we can just train the AI on that. It's just more expensive. You can get to the exact same AI output if you just use a generative neural or adversarial neural network. So you can't do that. You can get the exact same network by what?
I haven't seen anybody. Are you saying that?
So the problem is that that's expensive. So what you do is you take one neural network and it just outputs things, right? Just random things. Okay. And then you have a discriminator network that says, yes, this does look like a tree. No, this doesn't look like a tree, and so on and so forth, until that first network is outputting some form of art that would be used in the training set for your second stage of the network, which would then say, this is my AI generated art.
Tree and what doesn't, though? What's training the other thing?
It can be anything. You can have humans just like clicking, this is a tree, this is nothing, this is a blob, this is whatever. You can just have that done through like Mechanical Turk. You can train it. You can train it using other AIs, which try to do predictions of what's a trees or not. Mm-hmm. And so that's the first part. So you can get to the same outcome. The second thing is that.
One moment, sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So the second step would be whether or not it's fair use. So they are using your copyright images to create something. And part of fair use is whether or not something is sufficiently differentiated. So what you're doing with the network is you're making a classifier, which basically says, here are the rules of what I can do from inputs to get to outputs. So the derivative that you're creating is the classifier network. Do you think the Dewey Decimal System is violating the copyright holders of books?
No. But but the Dewey Decimal System. Okay, never mind. We're not at the generative process yet. Sorry.
Yeah. So the Dewey Decimal System, right? It basically says that how can I discriminate between these types of books into smaller and smaller subcategories into a point such that I can get a sufficiently small, whatever, categorization for all the books in existence, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what is the difference between that and creating the AI, the weights?
I think discussing the difference between like sorting and categorizing versus the ability to then generate things is different. I think you do need to consider the end result.
Wait, but you're just sorting and categorizing images. That's all the training step does.
Okay, the training step is fine, but when it comes to generating more stuff, that's where the problem lies, I feel like.
Okay, but so then now if you have something if I was to put
actually, wait, let me think.
50,000 images out to a jury, and I was to say which ones are human generated and which ones are AI generated, they wouldn't be able to tell.
This is the same things we were talking about earlier with the like digital art versus traditional art, like watercolor and watercolor. They can both look the same, but the distinguishing, it doesn't matter whether they can't be distinguished. One is digital and one is traditional. And if people
but what I'm saying is that, so say if I have a watercolor painting AI and it does the same watercolor paintings, I can put 2 watercolor paintings in front of the jury and they're never going to be able to tell the difference. There's no meaningful difference, right?
Okay, sure.
So then if you cannot tell the difference between anything derived by a human and anything derived from a robot, why is that infringing on somebody's copyright?
Just because if you buy stolen goods, just because you don't know it's stolen doesn't mean it's not bad. It wouldn't if it wasn't able to be generated without the initial input of works that weren't like given. I do think it's partially stolen. I do think if it's impossible to do that.
So when Walmart and Publix, they go and they make knockoff products, is that stealing?
Actually, there's like that's the reason why there's gray and black market products in the fashion industry.
Sorry,
I have no idea what that is. But I'm saying
basically, yes, people copying designs is bad and they get punished for it legally.
Okay, but if they're sufficiently different, right? Yeah. If I was to just copy your design exactly one for one, there'd be a problem. But if I make changes to it, there is a sufficient level of changes that can happen that makes it totally fine.
Humans making those changes with intent.
Okay, but
AI is just taking things from other things and jamming them together.
And they're making something unique with intent.
There's no intent there, though. No.
Wait, why is there not intent? I'm intending to make a tool.
Has no intent. And
the AI doesn't have an the person creating the AI.
This keeps coming up, and I need to make this distinction. If people were designing and training their own AI, I would be much more okay with calling the end results art because there's a lot of intentionality and choice there. But Midjourney and DALL-E are not that.
But they are. So
no. The people using those to generate art are not curating the training libraries. They're not changing the weights in the program to establish different values for their preferences. They're just entering.
So if I have an Etch-a-Sketch, if I have an Etch-a-Sketch and I draw something in the Etch-a-Sketch, am I not an artist?
What do you mean? Why would that not make you an artist?
Well, because the tool already has the capability and the functionality to create every single possible image on that Etch-a-Sketch that was made by the Etch-a-Sketch company.
But you're literally controlling it to do the things that it does with the AI thing.
Are they not?
Like I already said, in painting, no, they're not. I said if
they're
in
choosing
painting,
a seed and they're choosing a set of words.
No, but if there's no measurable difference other than randomization in terms of the output between one person putting in that prompt and another person putting in that prompt, there's no distinction of like their preferences or their artistic vision. Beyond that, the machine does everything else, and machines do not have
because the machine has already pre-created all of these art by the guy's training methodology, and you can only view the art by explicitly calling in the right functions into it. It's the same thing as drawing on the Etch-a-Sketch. Whoever created the Etch-a-Sketch has created the possibility for you to draw every single thing possible on the Etch-a-Sketch. You just have to rotate the buttons in the right way.
No, but there's actually a ton more input in the Etch-a-Sketch. Like I said, if people did input in painting, like paintings using AI doing in painting and stuff, I feel like those are art. I think that's impressive. But just like,
go ahead. I would say every single part of that machine learning model is like basically an output of the person who created it, right? So anything that comes out and is displayed by that machine, what?
The person who created the person who created the person who created like DALL-E or Midjourney?
Yeah, so it's a team of people that created DALL-E.
Yeah,
but
yes, I know exactly.
So everything into weights, everything into those weights, everything into that is weights.
Yeah.
And then when you go to it, you can use not an infinite, but a very large number of combinations of words and phrases and seeds to get a very large number of outcomes.
But again,
the art is already created.
Weights. The artist didn't choose those weights.
No. The artist is the person who trained that network. And so whenever you're interacting with that machine learning model,
artists.
What? Sorry?
Then any users are not artists. It's only the creators.
Yes, correct. But what's coming out is art, and the creators are artists. So you're both creating art, and you already have an artist who's created it.
I don't think so, because I think that the creators created a tool, and then people are using it. I think, like I said before, if people train their own, if somebody made their own training library, what?
You don't have to do this for a camera. If I take a camera and I take a picture, that's art. The same way that
because a person chose and had a lot of intent and settings and lens and camera and everything like that.
Okay, but there's all the same intent when I created the neural network, and it already has.
It doesn't.
No. The prompt, the size of the prompt, and everything is already pre-created by the artist. The only thing that happens is when some dumb person presses a few buttons on their keyboard, that it displays the artwork that I've already wanted after the computer does some math. I've already chosen every single input and output possible of this program as me, the artist, and you putting in the words and phrases into the model is just displaying my artwork that I've already created.
This is a little bit arcane, because that means I just don't think that means. I guess an analog for this would be like if you went to a museum and there was like a performance art thing where people pressed a button and a printer printed out art from an artist that already made it. Is that kind of the analogy? Like, is that analogous to what you're talking about? How what would be printed out would still be art because an artist initially made it?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think a better example is like, all right, if I go to a museum and I put out, 500 different color tiles, and there's an arrangement that you can make on the wall to put it into like a mosaic, right? Then
I don't think that's.
As the creator of that exhibit,
I feel like that would be art because people would be choosing where to put those tiles. Sorry, go ahead. I jumped ahead. Sorry.
But the people placing those tiles wouldn't be the artist, right? The person that made that presentation would be the artist.
No, it would be a collaborative work if they're choosing where to put the tiles to create art.
So in that, I've limited the number of tiles and the availability, correct?
Yeah.
So they can only choose from the tiles that I put there.
Yeah.
So when you create the AI,
does this spaceship work that I just ran into?
Right. So when I create the AI, the only inputs possible are the number of tokens that I allow it. So the number of letters that you can put into that model. So I've already chosen that. There's only the English dictionary that you can choose from, and you're only going to get outputs using those. And then you're using every single number between 0 and I think 2 to the 32nd. Those are the only possible inputs, and you can only get things out that I could have foreseen.
I just don't think it's the same. I think that, again, like the
You'll lose the unclear. Is it worth it to fix this one, or at this point should I just build my own? Because I'm encountering this really late in the game, right, Proteus?
Given a limited number of tiles, make the same exact thing, and if in a limited format like that, where all you have is this limited number of tiles and a little screen, two people could probably make the same thing, and their personal individual style and artistic eye wouldn't show up. But I think that's more okay in a collaborative work, whereas with AI, it's literally like you're just taking something small that doesn't actually contain any of their artistic preferences or skill or like their vision, how they see the world, anything that I feel like makes art different from copying isn't present in that.
But why is it not present? Those choices have already been made?
Because if two people enter the exact same prompt, the only
wait, let me
finish. The only reason the outputs are going to differ is because of randomization on the end of the AI, not because of the intent of the artist.
Well, no, because there's a random seed. But that's the point,
what I mean.
Right?
It's not the intent of the
two
artist.
People go to the board, if two different people go to the board and put the same pattern up, it's still the same piece of art that the person who's created that exhibit
that's why
has.
I said I feel like it's probably different in terms of like a collaborative work, but I don't feel like AI is a collaborative work. You're not collaborating.
Explain the purpose of building a new spaceship. Probably because I can make a better one than the stock one you find in the.
I feel like there's more.
What do you mean? It's just a viewing experience for them at that point, right? Like you're not collaborating with people when you go watch a movie.
No, because none of the creators of these, I think they've specifically tried not to imbue, or I would imagine they would, I'm just guessing. I don't think they've tried to imbue their own artistic preferences into it. I know, like I said earlier, I think there's a couple ones that have tried to weight things to be more inclusive, but beyond that, they're not making artistic choices.
How would they not be? Every time you're putting in a preference for the AI, you would essentially be making an artistic decision, right?
Yeah, but as the creators, but they're I think they would explicitly be not trying to do that in a way that's like curating it for art. I think they're trying to make it as broad as possible, which is the opposite of that.
Can you elaborate? What do you mean by making it as broad as possible?
So if you were going to create your own AI training library and train it and everything, whatever, you would be choosing those images for a reason. You would be picking specific weights for things for a reason. And that would be all artistic choices that I would be like behind, because that's your vision, these are your choices, da da da. Whereas there's like the people who created these who are largely just doing this to match prompts as accurately as possible and give people like what they want, rather than being like, this is my artistic vision, this is what I want to see in it.
Well, his artistic vision is that people that put in things see the things that they want to see. And when they put in the things,
this is having the same issue as like kind of broadening the definition of art, where like if you're considering that to be kind of like artistic vision, I feel like that's also nebulous and kind of broad.
I think if you're getting outcomes that people want and they're willing to use them in the same ways that they would traditional art, it's creating traditional art. If it's indistinguishable, if you couldn't go to two people and separate them, if you could use them in the exact same way and purpose, it's still artistic. And if you're not outputting the exact same thing that somebody else does, or you're creating meaningfully different works of art, you're no longer infringing on people's copyright.
I just disagree, I think. I feel like there's like just kind of fundamental disagreements in terms of like what makes things different, what makes things different when a machine does them versus when a human does them, and how that's related to copyright law, things like that.
Is it my turn?
If you want to go.
What the fuck is that?
Session. All right, Destiny.
Oh.
You ready for this?
What am I being invoked for?
I need to convince you that art is a super language.
Okay.
Can you describe English, the language, to me?
Probably not.
Try.
Okay, I love you guys. I'm gonna hop out.
See you later, buddy. Languages probably do a couple of things. I would say that the philosophy of language is like a whole thing. Like people spend their whole lives trying to define this shit. I would say, broadly speaking, a language is probably something that we develop to roughly convey a mind state to another person. I think, like, roughly speaking, in the broadest sense.
Okay. The reason I call art a super language is because it not only allows us to do that, but also lets us interpret things from the world where they might not actually exist.
I don't know what that means.
So people can use art to communicate, right?
Can they communicate what?
They can try to invoke concepts or ideas, thoughts.
Sure, you can do that with almost anything.
But it has to be a language.
I guess. How would you define language?
How would I define language? It's a interpretation tool that we use to communicate with each other and with our surroundings.
Okay.
So when
Why do I have to be convinced that this is going to get like really complicated?
Because this is the only way that art can have a good definition.
Okay.
If you think of art as a language, then it all makes sense. Because you don't label something as like English or Spanish, the language, right? English and Spanish, the language, are trying to give you a like a game engine to interpret things, to do a lot of the legwork for you. And art is kind of a untamed version of that.
Okay.
Where it lets us take all the sensory information that we gather and interpret it into concepts or ideas or emotions or things like that. So like the art, quote unquote, label equivalent of English would be like an English essay, right? It's an intentional process in which we're trying to convey at least general broad ideas through like the medium. But what's so beautiful about art is that it allows us to do things that are not intentionally trying to communicate with us.
All right. That could work, I guess.
Do you have any issues with the definition? Is there any reason that you would not like this definition?
It just seems really, really wordy and complicated. I don't know if I would try to make a normal person understand it. But hey, if it works, then it works. Then fucking A, dude. Hell yeah. Amen.
I'm gonna go snack dinner, but this was a fun talk.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
A little chaotic, but
yeah. I think that there's a really complicated question around. I mean, I'm sure at the very least you agree with that. That it's very, very complicated to even know like what is art. So
the whole reason I wanted to talk about this is because I think it's nebulous and subjective. But I feel like I have my standards for what it is, and I wanted to discuss those, and I think we discussed them to fucking death, honestly. Okay. So.
Gotcha. All right. Be careful. Thanks for the chat. If you ever want to pop in to hash it out before, or some more too. Although I think we kind of know where we land this, but if there's anything more you want to talk about, feel free to jump in anytime.
Yeah, for sure. See ya.
Bye. Loser.
All right. Before we go, we got to talk about your worst take from last year.
My worst take from last year. Okay. Wait, hold on.
You said that.
Can we clear this out a little bit?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, little Tojo, I love you. It's been fun, buddy.
No. Okay.
Stay safe, buddy.
Bye. I'll see you tomorrow.
Bye. Lycan, what are you doing here? Okay, bye. Rage Hope's in here. Sejin. Aaron, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
And Weasel Supreme. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, go ahead.
All right. Your absolute worst take from last year is that video games shouldn't have difficulties.
I don't know if I said that video games shouldn't have them, but I would defend the concept of like if somebody wants to make a game that doesn't have them, then sure.
Isn't that a little bit ableist of you?
Ooh. No. Why do video games have to be accessible to all people? What kind of starting assumption is that?
Well, I mean, I feel like that everybody should have the experience of being able to. Okay, all right. I guess that's fine.
Do you think everybody should be able to beat every video game? Do you really believe that?
I think they should be able to experience the story, not on every difficulty, but yes.
You can experience the story by what? Wait, why should you even be able to experience every story? Not every person right now could experience every story. If you're blind or deaf, you're going to be necessarily missing parts of.
Sure, but to the extent that your senses will, I just think that just because, you may not have the same reflexes or anything else, that you should just be locked out of something that you enjoy.
Everybody can experience the story of any video game. That's why we have YouTube, or synopsis.
I mean, sure, but we got YouTube. But yeah, I don't agree that every a game by definition is like a competition or a contest of some sort. I don't think that it is a requirement.
It's single player.
Even single player is a game. It's still a contest of some sort. I don't think it's a requirement that every game has to be beatable by every person. I don't think that's the case.
Not on every difficulty, but I don't know. I just think from an accessibility standpoint, it would be, you should just have the health sliders and everything else. And that just because you hit a certain age, it shouldn't just lock you out of doing something that you enjoy because people arbitrarily want to set bars.
It's not arbitrary at all. There's value, there's meaning to that. Like, if I'm talking to somebody that beat like Final Fantasy VII, or if I'm talking to somebody that beat Dark Souls 3 or Elden Ring, I know that we had a similar experience. We were in the same world. Like contending with the same things.
But if I was to say hard, if we beat it on hard, we beat it on elite, don't you get the same clarifying whatever?
Yeah, but there's a different feeling of like experiencing something where like we both, but like we like if somebody says I beat Elden Ring, it's not like, oh, what difficulty, blah blah. It's like, oh, you beat it. Oh, cool. We like kind of like walked through the same world. There's an experience that we shared there, right? As long as you didn't spam Bloodhound stuff, right? There's like an experience that we have there that's like kind of cool. You can make difficulties if you want. I'm just saying that there is like a novelty. There's like a feeling to like having some things being difficult, and if somebody beats them, it's kind of like a, I don't know, you call it a rite of passage or something, but.
Sure, but I would say like it's the same thing as just saying, oh, I beat Halo on Legendary, as opposed to I beat Halo. I don't think it adds any meaningful difference to have to add a difficulty to a name versus just locking people out entirely. But
sure, you can feel that way. I disagree. I like that fucking scrub ass noobs haven't beat Dark Souls. So when somebody's like, are you a game? They're like, I'm a gamer. And it's like, really? I play Animal Crossing. Have you beat Dark Souls? They're like, no. And you're like, damn. Gay cap.
Based. All right. Appreciate it. I'll see you later.
What about walking Destiny? Do you think walking should only have one difficulty?
What?
Just tell us you hate wheelchairs, you fuck.
True. Spaceship Ion booster tank.
Yeah.
True. Good
If we
job.
just do away with wheelchairs, then everybody, who walks will have that shared experience.
Good one, dude. Nice.
Sorry.
Are you okay?
No, this is my dying wish. I'm on my deathbed. Was to be in an orbiter mega call.
Oh, well, good job. You did it.
I kind of want to talk about that art stuff, but
Yeah, go for it. What's up?
it's over and done with.
It's
Also,
not.
I'm like fucking walking in like near the end of the conversation. I don't know what's already been said.
Oh, no. Trust
Everything.
me. They love this conversation.
Everything was
I don't know.
covered.
I think it's interesting. I get the feeling that Rage Pub sees no distinction. I understand his point, but he's fucking gone, and now I'd basically be mediating between a conversation between two people that aren't fucking here anymore. So
Whole spaceship floor.
But I did
Spaceship
think it did
wall.
correlate pretty well with a little
tiles.
piece of cinema called The Menu, which I watched last night.
Wasn't it fucking awesome?
I don't know if it was fucking awesome. It was a cute, entertaining little romp. I think.
Maybe it's the foodie thing. Well, you're a foodie too, right?
Sure, I'm an enjoyer of food. I like food.
Okay. I thought the foodie aspect of it, like, there was just a lot of commentary on the restaurant industry, foodies, food nerds, all that shit. I thought it was really good.
I think there is something that relates between his little spiel to who we thought was the protagonist at the beginning, the foodie guy or whatever, between the chef and the foodie guy, where it was like, you think you know this art, like you're an appreciator of this art. It seems to be the thing that you appreciate more than anything. You can articulate all the things that make it good, but you can't create it. I see that there's some distinction between that and like being a traditional or conventional artist and being somebody who just like puts in search terms to get something that gets generated out of it that they know that they can appreciate or something like that. Like functionally, there's some distinction here. I understand Rage Pope, your argument that what do artists draw on nowadays? It's Wacom tablets. What about before Wacom tablets? They drew on canvas. And there was probably a whole art and science when it came to like canvas making that's now lost through, and even before that, there's an automation process that probably makes canvases that like people had to do by hand. And there's probably a whole selection process for materials and integrating them and, constructing them or whatever and weaving them into canvas. There's probably a whole art form to that's now lost to like a manufacturing process. And you're drawing a distinction, or you're drawing a parallel between these two things.
Yeah, and then I would kind of add some stuff on top of that. Is like certain art can only be done with certain tools. Like they've invented new things to be able to do stuff in like sculpture or like chainsaw carving or whatever else. But the people who are creating those tools, even if it's doing a large amount of work, like the CNC machine or something, no one who invented the CNC machine or who assembled it is going to be assigned at all to that work of art, right? And no one would say that if I went on a computer and I made, a skull, and then I programmed a machine to just drill it out, and then I filled it with plastic 50,000 times, that each one of those isn't a work of art. And that if I had a computer do the exact same thing, where it generated a skull and then printed it all out, no one would say that is an art. No one would be able to distinguish it, but yet they want to cling to something to defend something that clearly doesn't exist.
Whether or not it's art, I don't think should be like the fulcrum by which like this argument is made on its axis, because like you can have incredibly broad and vague definitions of art that just basically mean anything that's like an expression of a human thought. It's like similar to how Destiny defined language earlier. I think we could just broadly agree that art is anything that's like, whatever, like made out of human intentionality to convey some set of thought or something like that.
Sure, but if people are going to pay for it in the exact same way as a substitute for the product, it becomes irrelevant whether or not it is or isn't, if it's just going to replace whatever that thing is.
Not necessarily irrelevant. I understand you're coming at this from like a consumption point of view. That's why I brought up this sequence from the menu. You're looking at this from the point of view of like the foodie or something. I think this is actually like a pretty decent parallel. The difference is when I mentioned earlier, like the whole automating process for making a canvas versus then graduating to the Wacom tablet or something. All of these like had one thing in common, which is still that you had a person that was intentionally making choices, artistic choices. Every stroke, every hue that's used to like compose a painting is like done out of the intention of an artist. It's like shapes that are taken form out of a human mind every single step of the way. Whereas the best you can do through like an AI art algorithm or something, which is functionally not really any different from Google image search or something like that, is just like put in something that you hope spits out something that you will like. Like a lot of intentionality is lost. Sure, the consumer point of view, it may be irrelevant or to some people or something like that. But that's where you're sort of like losing some meaningful distinction of what makes it art, which is like the human intentionality, like the
but there's a
resolution
lot of
of
intentionality that's put into, so that when you're putting in something, it gives you the thing that you want.
Well, it's different. It's like the degree, it's the resolution, the granularity of the intentionality in each individual choice that's made to compose like a greater image. I'm not saying that this means AA art is bad and shouldn't replace the traditional whatever. Like I don't really care, but there is a meaningful distinction here.
I don't see it. If a human makes a picture and an AI creates the exact same picture, it has the exact same outcome. It's the exact same thing. I don't.
To the consumer.
Wait, to be clear, hold on. That's not actually the case, right?
What do you mean it's not the case?
The way that we interpret art can definitely change based on additional information we find about the creator, right?
Yeah, that's true. I agree.
Well, I could, but
that, yeah.
I guess if you don't know anything about the creator,
if you don't know, you'll make some assumptions, but additional information can change how you view a piece of art, right? Like I could show you a photograph of a person and it's wholly unremarkable and you're just like, okay. And then I could tell you, well, look really, really, really closely. This is like a photorealistic sketch and your appreciation for that art will grow 100-fold. And you're technically interpreting, you're perceiving it the same way, but now you've got like additional context for the creation of it.
But what if I just lied about it?
Well, then that would also change it. But again, but you're lying about it doesn't show what it's saying. I never said the fact of the matter. I just said that a person's perception of an art or their perception or given more information about like the creation of a piece of art will change the way they perceive it.
There's even like a video, I think, on Banksy's YouTube channel where he had Banksy originals and he set a street vendor up with them and the vendor presents them as if he's selling reproductions only. And so somebody actually buys like an original Banksy for like $30 or something like that. But like everybody else is just like walking by. Or if you, like another example would be if you were shown a snapshot and you didn't think anything of it, but if I told you Ansel Adams took it, maybe you'd recontextualize it and think it was more impressive.
So art is the human perception of the art, not what the actual art is.
Well, it can be a combination of these things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the challenging part about it, is that it seems like all of these things can kind of factor in, is the artist's intention and our perception, whether there even was an artist, right? Yeah.
So then we should just lie to people and tell them it's AI art, and they'll have even more appreciation of something, even though it takes less time and effort, is what I'm hearing.
I think, like, in a weird kind of, if this was a movie way, this is like the A plot and the B plot. The conversation that I had with Taj earlier ties into this a bit, where people look at that sock darling girl, and some of them think she's gross because they think she's trans, and she's not, but they like perceive her as such because sometimes she defends trans people on Twitter. So it's like, but is she trans? Well, I don't know. Do you know if anybody's trans online? Fuck, like there's a lot of these femboys that are more female passing than a lot of cis women, you know? But like, there's a whole question of what is a thing and what is our perception of a thing, and we don't even verify or validate like 99% of the things that we interact with, right? Like everything on the internet, like we have no idea how much of that is real or not. It can either be like in a concrete sense, like news, like fake news or real news, or it can even be kind of in a more abstract sense, like the friend that I'm talking to online. Could it be a catfish? Could it be a GPT-3 like chatbot, demo? Could it be a group of people working on something? When I'm talking to a girl on OnlyFans, doesn't matter if it's the real girl or not. If someone else is sexting me behind the account, like all of these questions of like what are things and what is reality and what is our perceptions of things and how much does that play into what a thing actually is, or does it even matter what a thing actually is? I think they're all interesting questions, but they're really, really, really hard to answer. And I think the internet is like pushing the boundaries on how we like we're forced to confront those things, I think.
That sounds like a new Turing test.
I feel like Turing tests are like a thing of the past. Like any chatbot is going to pass any Turing test with flying colors these days, right?
So a really interesting thing that happened was there was like an online therapy thing where you could like talk to people about your problems and they do whatever. And so they replaced like a few thousand sessions with like speaking to Chat GPT instead of with like a human just like moderating so it wasn't saying crazy shit. Mm-hmm. But it was incredibly effective, more effective than talking to a person until you told them that they actually talked to Chat GPT.
Okay. You play Factorial, right, Rachebob?
Yeah, I do.
I know because I've seen you, and it's like it looks like what Destiny's been playing. Have you played space exploration?
I'm about 70 hours in.
Okay, so like this entire factory that Destiny has built, and this entire like arduous undertaking that he's taken head on and like to complete or whatever. By the time he completes it, this will mean probably a lot more to you than if he said, yeah, I've seen the end
Wait,
of
why would it
Factorial.
mean anything to me?
Because you've got context for the difficulty of it.
Yeah.
It's like telling somebody like you can like, oh, I can run a mile in like 3.5 minutes. I don't know, to some random person that just like, oh, I guess that's fast. But to like, I don't even know if people can run 3.5 minute miles. But like to somebody, I guess that knows like track and field times, like, oh god, that's like really impressive because you got the additional background information, right?
So if you'll allow me to finish, Rage Puppy motherfucker, it means a lot more to you, like than if you just like talk to somebody off the street and says, yeah, I finished this game or whatever. Like whether he actually did it or he imported a save. The meaning is there for people who like understand the process, where it may be kind of absent for people who don't, and there is meaning there. So like the idea that every consumer of any given type of art is going to be equal is already, I think, not a great premise.
I don't think it has any extra value because he put 10,000 hours into it, or if he just downloaded somebody else's save.
No, you would view it differently. Oh, a really good example is
I would view you different. I would view
exactly.
You different,
No, but I think you'd even view the art differently. I think a good example of this is the Michelangelo paintings on the Sistine Chapel. Like if you when your teacher tells you that like all of these paintings, not only are they beautiful and magnificent and artistic and all that, he had to do all of these like on his back with like ladders going up to the top and like drawing upside down and shit and like with his arms tied and everything. I think it changes the way you view the art too. Like it becomes a much more arduous process. I think you gain a lot more respect for the art itself, or at least I do. I don't know.
Most people will. I would find it hard to believe if RagePub does not. And these sorts of things, like, there are conservatories for these types of artwork. Hang on, let me swallow.
Oh, a really good example too is any game where like if somebody tells you they beat something and people are asking like, oh, did you use like a cheat? Did you use an engine? And like, no, I did this like legit. Or even for like Dark Souls, we used that example earlier. Like, oh, I beat Dark Souls. Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, I summoned for every boss battle. Oh, I don't care. It's not impressive anymore, right?
Yeah.
Like, but I think that's about the process and how the process gives value to you, not the factory that you have at the end of the game. Yeah. Like if someone was to say that I painted this like masterpiece or whatever, and an AI could just put out the same masterpiece, that doesn't mean anything to me. But I know that person has a lot of.
It means nothing to you. It doesn't mean anything. It means zero.
No, it means a lot about the person who accomplished the things and what they can do. But if you can output or have the same thing come from a machine or a person, there's no differentiation in it for me. Like if someone was to say this lump of coal was mined by a child, or this lump of coal was mined by, a 500,000 ton digging machine, the outcome is the same. You're still getting the same piece of coal. You're still going to get the same whatever from it, regardless of what goes in. Now, your respect for the kid digging in the mine is clearly going to be different than the guy operating the machine, but that doesn't change anything about the thing that you have.
I understand what you're saying. I just don't think as humans, I just don't think we perceive things that way. I don't think we think of things as like just the thing you have. I think that we ascribe a whole lot more subjectivity into it based on a variety of different things. Are you serious?
I understand, like, it seems like this conversation that you want to have, you're setting the goalposts as narrow as the outcome. The outcome is the outcome. Nobody disagrees. Like, sure. Yeah, but like we're having this conversation about all the other things that are not contained within these goalposts that, the goalposts.
Sure, yeah, you can definitely get a lot from it. That's not just like, okay, well, here's the outcome. I agree with that. Oh, here's another one. So if we're going to use the same thing, if you have a diamond, right, one's created by a machine, one's dug up by, blood diamonds in Africa, is it unethical not to use the blood diamond because the kid's already died to bring it to market?
Well, the idea here would be that you're sort of sanctioning this activity and like helping it perpetuate forward, I think, right?
Was the Nazi and the Unit 731 research on the tortured prisoners, is it ethical to use that research or cite it in a study?
Well, that research was actually...
It's dog shit, I know, but you know what the fuck I'm asking. Don't be a fucking retard on every fucking question I have. Yeah, obviously, yes. The data itself was fucking trash. I don't know if the people just like torturing people, but like they wouldn't even record temperatures for the water when they're like testing like hypothermia and shit. It was absolute dog shit. But if it was good data, then I think it's an ethical question of like, do you use the data or not?
But I would say, yeah, you probably should. Yeah.
Unit 731 was Japan, yes. But they also did experimentation on prisoners and shit, and there was unethical data that came out of it. But even the Unit 731 data was garbage. I don't know why you're spamming this like a fucking retard.
Steven, there was a hypothetical that I think Mr. Piss Company presented to you about like, oh, is you taking a morning piss, is that art? And I mean, it's like you doing it like just a regular part of your routine like that. Obviously not. But I was like, does he not believe in like avant-garde performance art? Because it's like if you booked a whole like theater and set up like a show and courted an audience
Sold it
and
on your
marketed it.
OnlyFans.
And yeah, exactly. Like did a stage performance where like the only thing you did was you walk out on stage, stage light, you center stage.
Well, yeah, Pisco would say,
Pisco
would say that yes, that counts as art, but that's because there's an intentionality there in creating it, right?
Does he think art can't be random?
I don't know what he would say to that. I don't remember what his final definition settled on, but
I don't think he ever gave one. I don't think either like Pisco or Pep ever posited like a definition of art. I remember, I think Rage Pop asked them, and then he responded with like.
Pep gave a definition. The definition was there needs to be intent by the person, by the person doing it. There needs to be a conscious choice by the person doing the art, and that their previous experiences are on display through the art.
I see.
I don't know about all that. There can be. I feel like that's the least interesting part of this discussion is like the definition of art. Like, there are plenty of definitions of art, even as a noun, as a single form or whatever, that can encompass all sorts of different things. Something can be art to you that's completely random. A man fucking walking out of a bar and puking on the ground and slipping in it can be art to you, even though it was like, completely unintentional from the man. Like that could be a memory that's like a formative thing for you and that you laugh about and has like a lot of meaning for you or whatever, even though it's completely random. And we might call that art. If you describe that.
I agree with you. This is kind of what I was pushing earlier, that like, this is why I feel like when AI artists get really mad, or not AI artists, when traditional artists get really mad, what they're mad about is that like AI art is starting to make headway into areas that we thought it couldn't. We thought these were like unique to humans. And now that they have, they're like scrambling to create some ironclad definition of art that can protect human artists. When the reality is it's almost a hilariously naive concept that you're gonna get a concrete definition of what is art, because I'm pretty sure from the very first fucking caveman painting, I bet Ooga Booga was screaming over at Booga Ooga that like his painting sucked so bad it didn't even count as art, and it looked like some random shit that a buffalo smeared against the wall, right? Like there is no good answer to this, right? It's hilarious to think that they could come up with one, but they're trying to, because they're desperately trying to section off like, this is something that only humans can do, and it has to be a definition that AI can't like meet. That's what I think. Yeah.
They're trying to protect their skill set as like a protected, which I think is fair, even. Because
yeah, I mean, it's not just a protecting of skill set, though. I think there's a fight to protect like the specialness of humanity, right?
Sure.
Like, we want to feel like we can do something that machines can't do, and it feels really weird and a little bit shitty to think that a machine can do literally. Because at the end of the day, I mean, even in all the robot movies that we've seen of like robots taking over, like what wins in the end? It's like human ingenuity, human creativity, the human desire to carry on, right? The T-1000 is an unstoppable killing machine, but the human spirit, innovated time machines, took us into the past, and to think that like all of that could just be co-opted by machines is like really scary.
Yeah, but it being scary, like it's cope. Like we have to just fucking look into the future rigorously and accept like the brutal. AI didn't end that way. AI ended with the robots, I think, winning, right, basically, or at least outliving the humans, whatever it was. Maybe I can't remember. I think there was like a huge like web ring or something, huge like lore dump behind the scenes in that movie where humans, I think, we extincted ourselves and the robots sort of outsurvived us, which I think is
in what movie?
AI, the one with Haley Joel Osment.
Oh, AI. Okay, I don't know. Sorry, I was thinking Terminator still.
No, that would make Terminator way more interesting. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I get it. I think so. For Rage Pop, like Japan has these programs where they sort of like preserve their culture. Nowadays, katanas are made like mass production, Japanese katana blades.
Yeah.
Where they like, I think they give like, I think it's like $20,000 a year per person to any given like project that the Japanese government deems, worthy of like preserving Japanese culture and art and stuff, and like that stuff is usually not katanas, but it's more like paper making or like making certain types of food or something like that. And you can go and visit these like cultural sites and they can show you like the whole process. It's basically like a museum. They have something similar in Hawaii. They've got like the Polynesian Cultural Center, the PCC, where they do the same thing. It's like a day where you can go and like make all the things that they used to have to make for survival and for huts and stuff. Do you think that there's value in that and that the government should be allotting like an amount of money to preserving this sort of thing?
I think if there's enough people that want it, then sure. But I would say it's not necessarily the importance isn't like we need to be able to like create a fire and create a whatever, make steel by hand in case whatever nuclear apocalypse comes. I think the important thing is like the values that you instill with people and like the whatever joy and whatever you're bringing to them. It's not necessarily the we need to preserve whatever it is. It's just like, all right, well, we can go have our citizens do whatever, and we can just have some facade on top of it.
Okay, my question was, do you think that this is...
No, I don't really think that there's a ton of value in preserving a lot of stuff that's culture.
Ooh.
Dang.
Jeez.
Okay, I watched, on Amazon, there's a series called James May, Our Man in Japan. And in that, he has this little mini rant where he talks about how one of the things he appreciates about Japan is how Japanese it is. You go there and like in the age of a globally interconnected, world of trade where, like everywhere you go, everyone's wearing jeans and carrying iPhones or whatever. Japan still feels like something that's wholly different. And then he reconciles that. Me talking like this, I fail to see the distinction between this and the people who talk about how we want to keep Britain for Brits or whatever, even though that comes with a bunch of other like baggage.
Yeah, well, there's a ton of xenophobia in Japan, to be clear. So a lot of it is probably reflected in their immigration policies and everything else.
Can you have one without the other, though? And if you can, like, is that not a thing that's valuable to appreciate?
I don't necessarily think that preserving a culture is anything that's worth saving over anything else. I think it's like really weird to say that if you're coming to America that you must be like all other Americans, like that you can't have, whatever religion that you came with, you can't have whatever foods and cultures. And I think that's what makes things unique. Like if you want to within your own family or within your own whatever, make those decisions. But as a society, we shouldn't just freeze things in time. Like I think it's
not
okay
about freezing
to say
in time. Because he talks about how modern it feels. They have bullet trains. That's not being frozen in time. In many ways, they're more advanced than we are. Right?
Yeah, the question is like, is Japan just a reference to a place on a map, or does Japan refer to a collection of cultural ideas and things that you have to work to preserve so that Japan doesn't disappear into the vastness of the world? Like, should any country be different than any other country or whatever? It's a question.
Yes, the cultural affects of Japan are so distinct that he cannot confuse when he's in Japan that he's anywhere else, the way that he might in certain parts of Rome, where if he's at like a mall in Rome and it's all the same sort of like outlets that he would find in Hollywood or something like that. Like, is this not something that can be appreciated and isn't by default pernicious?
I mean, it can be, I guess, but the question is like, why do people have different preferences in different areas, right? And why do we have convergent preferences across most of the human population? Because it seems like most people want similar things over time.
I don't think it's necessarily preferences, so much as it might be like a penchant to try to just preserve what came before out of respect or something like that.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is like it appears like most humans in most societies are converging on like the same things are aesthetically pleasing or taste good to us or whatever. And so you see the same kind of general spread of whatever around the world. And so that, is it worth fighting? I don't know. I don't think it's worth fighting to just say like, oh, but we have to have, this traditional food because everybody eats the salted rotting fish or whatever for the sake of eating the salted rotting fish. I don't know if that necessarily imbues something into your culture that needs to be protected. I don't know.
I would feel even worse about the idea that like the whole world just decides that hamburgers are the best, and then it's like basically the only thing you can find anywhere, and there's like no more value in distinguishing between like the heritage foods that came out of this place or that place. Like variety is the spice of life to me.
So here's a question for you. Mm-hmm. If everybody in the world had to eat hamburgers always, but we could support another 500 million humans alive on Earth, would you make that trade?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
So if everybody had to eat hamburgers always for every meal for the rest of eternity, but we could support 500 million more people, are we obligated to do that?
That's a good question. But we can support more. Does that sort of insinuate that like 500 million babies otherwise would have been born?
Wait, I don't think that's an interesting question. Like, there's going to be a trade-off to where, like, if there's like a super fun food, but it costs like 1 trillion cows to make a certain type of food, then we probably wouldn't opt for it, right? But if we've got a place where we can support a ton of different types of foods, ought some cultures try to preserve their uniqueness, assuming they're not standing in the face of oblivion or something? Sure. Or is there no?
Yeah, I don't necessarily know if you should make a trade-off just because it exists. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I agree, but then it sounds like you're making the opposite argument, which is that like,
if people want to protect it, I don't see any reason why they shouldn't be able to. But personally, I don't see any reason to protect it.
Well, it may not even come from in Japan's case, it probably does come from like an intentional choice to protect like cultural heritage and history and shit like that. But even if it doesn't, even if it's just like out of consequence and happenstance, like, is that not a thing that we can like appreciate?
I mean, we can appreciate it, but I don't have any reason to say that we must or we should, or if it's a good or bad thing. It's just whatever. It's whatever people want to do. Like the same thing with people's dating preferences. Like,
well, I don't think that's not interesting. He's not asking you like, can people do whatever it is they want to do? Obviously they can. He's just asking if you think that is a worthwhile concept to defend, right?
I don't think it is, but the same way that I don't think that, dating another guy is like an interesting or worthwhile thing to me, but I can see why other people would appreciate it, I guess.
I'll tell you what, man, like I grew up watching Star Trek, and one of my favorite things about Star Trek is like, it's about examining all the different, all the different elements that could exist in a given society, or all the peculiarities that like some peoples might adopt that others wouldn't see value in, and like having those things articulated in the best light, and like helping you get to see perspectives that seem alien or like completely bizarre. And the more I like learned about the world and like traveled and shit like that, the more I started to see that these are kind of like, a lot of these concepts were built out of things that already exist on Earth or in our history and stuff. Like seeing the strange and the familiar, I think is like a really enriching and gratifying like skill to develop, and provides a lot for like how you interact with the world and like how much life means to you and stuff. Or that's been the case for me anyway.
Sure, but I guess I don't meaningfully see like having to have a someone like making katanas still versus like learning about, people made katanas in this way. Like, I don't.
Well, he's not talking about like, because he brought up the example of bullet trains. Like, sure, you can innovate and do new things, but they could still be like uniquely Japanese in character.
Well, and
sure, but then if everybody around the world copied their bullet trains, would you say that's uniquely Japanese in character, or is that just another?
Has anybody in any part of the world managed to completely copy somebody's culture? Seems like there are still parts of and aspects of our history and our humanity that make one culture different from another, right?
Sure, but we've definitely pushed huge aspects of our culture on all sorts of people. But
yeah, and yet they remain distinctly different.
For it to mix.
And yet they remain distinctly different from place to place, right? There is no place you could go in the world that would feel like New York City, despite people copying aspects of it. And then I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
But so, Rage Pope, you've never seen anything part of somebody else's culture that you thought was worthy of like cultural preservation?
I mean, I think there's interesting things, but I wouldn't say things should just be preserved just because they're different from what other people do. Like, and
no, I'm not saying preserving it for the sake of preserving it. I'm saying like nothing has ever inspired you or like spoken to you that you felt like it ought be if it were ever like threatened.
Oh, not really.
Damn.
So
savage.
To be clear, like it's a question of scale as well. Like I don't think all katanas that are made should be made in the traditional way, but I think it's worthwhile to like set aside and cordon off like a little bit of resources to like to
well, I mean, if you just preserve the knowledge and training in like a book or something.
No, the fact that it still happens,
and you could just retrain somebody if they wanted to do it. I don't see.
Well, people do want to do it, so that's fine. And like allotting money,
that's fine. Yeah,
allotting money for people to do it and make it sort of like a museum sort of experience where you can go and see and participate a little bit. I think it's like super valuable.
Yeah, that's fine. But like, I guess there's like every single object you could go. Like, obviously, katanas are a lot more iconic or whatever. But would you say the same thing about should we go back and teach everybody how to make knives, how to make fishing poles, how to make whatever?
Okay. No, I don't think we should teach everybody how to do these things. But
no. Just like every single object, right? Like there are clearly some things that like people think are pretty cool, and it's still worth remembering. But 10,000 years from now, is it still going to be worth remembering?
If we can afford it and people are interested in it, then hell yeah.
Like, sure, yeah, I think that's fine. I wouldn't personally say like, oh, we must protect the katana. But if people wanted to do that, then sure, yeah, I can see why it has significance. I can see that's pretty cool and people have fun doing it. So I don't see any reason why you wouldn't if people wanted to continue doing it. But I wouldn't be leading the crusade for we must protect the katana.
It's not about protecting the katana. It's about protecting the process by which it used to be made. And like,
sure,
because katanas are still made in a more like contemporary way today.
Right. So the only reason that making the katana in the old way has any value is because people think that it has value.
Well, I think it's more, did you hear the question I asked on stream where like, let's say that you consent to something and then your mind is wiped and then somebody does it to you the next day and you're like, hold on, I didn't consent to that. And it's like, well, I mean, you did, you just don't remember because we wiped your mind. And then there's like a question of like, well, is that still consent? And I think intuitively, we want to say like intuitively, no, something feels wrong there.
Really?
Absolutely, yes. If you, let's say that you consent to me like doing rape to you, right? Consent, non-consent. You're like, oh yeah, I consent to that, but I'm gonna make you consent to it, but now I'm gonna wipe your mind. And then let's say tomorrow you don't remember consenting to that, and then I show up and I rape you. you're probably not going to feel too good about that, even if I tell you.
Because isn't the experience that you're going to have in the second case something that's going to be extremely negative because you don't have the memory of the thing before?
Yes.
But if you're like,
but that part that you just said, the memory, it seems like memory seems to form some part of our identity. Identity is really complicated, but it seems like it forms some part of our identity. You're going to make some pedantic objection, and I don't care. You've got the broad point of what I just...
Like, if it's something that is good that you would have consented to anyways, like, oh, do you
But that's obviously not what I'm
cookies?
talking about. Something good that you would have consented to anyway doesn't require your consent. It's not somebody giving you a present. It's something doing something that requires your consent. So it's probably not something good. That's why I said it was going to be a pedantic objection, and it was. Okay, fuck you. Okay. Right. It seems like the memory part is like a pretty important part of what our identity is. So when people try to distinguish between one culture and another, that process of like making a katana, it's not just cool because it's a katana. It might be cool to a group of people because it's part of what forms their cultural identity. That history, that memory part might be something they value.
Yes, yeah. And as long as they value it, then they can continue to preserve it. But if people just started to stop associating Japan with katanas and now with bullet trains and it fell out of existence, I wouldn't, have any problems with that.
Sure, I think that's fair.
Well, the thing
I
is
think
that,
there's
like,
utility beyond like preserving a cultural identity. And it has more to do with like wanting to, I guess, preserve like primary sources. Because Rage Pub, if like everybody if societies took this route of just allowing things to organically, like these processes that were once inspired by traditional, like with the katana thing, like traditional katana crafting or something like that, past a certain point, I think it will become so derivative that to build off of something that's already kind of like a watered down of something else, you're kind of gonna like create a ceiling there, maybe with some like, in terms of like creativity or like something being like transformed in an interesting way that you wouldn't be able to that you would be enabled to if you actually had like the primary source preserved.
I mean, potentially, but there's just as many things that, you could otherwise do with that storage and knowledge and building on everything else, because there's been a lot of things that have been lost to history, and it's unclear whether or not that forgetting something will actually impact you, how that'll actually impact things in the future. It's kind of like storing all the things in your house. Maybe one day you'll use it, but at some point you're just filled with all sorts of meaningless junk. I don't think preserving things for the sake
if you
of preserving
forgot you
things.
had a family and all of your experiences with them, it's unclear how that would affect your future and whether or not that would make you happy.
Sure, but is it really like a family? Or if you have like 50,000 Pokemon cards that you haven't touched since you were in like the 3rd grade or whatever, just held out because just in case you're going to use them again?
Wait, not Pokemon cards, but wouldn't you say that there's something more important about like having original copies of like a family photo album as opposed to having like only the digital uploads? It's the same picture.
Probably not.
I wouldn't say so. I think the value of the picture, there can be some value in the thing itself, but I think that the true value of pictures is typically the memories that they invoke.
Yeah.
I would say the same thing,
like,
but I could understand if somebody was like, no, I want the original because that has literally changed hands. Like, this is an object that has been made contact with my, my grandmother who's not with me anymore or whatever. Like,
sure.
Yeah.
I would agree, like, oh, shit, I can see that wouldn't be meaningful to me because I'm like a digital cuck. But, I could understand that. And to be clear, I want to readdress this because I feel like something's not being engaged with. Like, when it comes to katanas and bullet trains, it's not that I think Japanese culture should still be associated with katanas or whatever, and that I don't want the bullet train to take over as like the cultural monument or something like that. It's more like each step along the way, and even things that have been largely forgotten by the general public, like is part of the story of your civilization and like the world that you live in, the country, the city, whatever it is. In Hawaii, like I said, at the the Polynesian Cultural Center, they teach you how to make like paper out of fucking coconut husks or whatever. When people think of Hawaii, they don't think of this. But if you learn about it, it informs like it's one data point for like that informs how the society was built, and it's part of the history. It's part of the tapestry for like literally my life experience if you live there.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's the same thing with all the history of like the European wars for the last, 500,000, 2,000, 5,000 years. It all has meaning, and it just matters whether or not it becomes relevant to the public anymore. And as things get older and fade away, it's not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. And we shouldn't push things out, but we shouldn't just hold on for the sake of holding on, I guess. I don't know. Maybe I'm just like missing the point
for the sake of holding on. It's holding on for all the things I just mentioned.
Sure, but at some point it just becomes irrelevant. Like if we're like jetting around space, like do you think it's still relevant that there's like coconut husk paper being made? I don't know if it would.
That's part of the story. Absolutely.
But I don't think every part of every story needs to be preserved forever. I think there's a reason why things evolve and change and everything else along the way.
I think there's a ton of meaning in like being like, holy shit, my people fucking roam the stars and we used to make paper out of fruit.
Sure, but it's not, there's probably a million things that you can use instead of paper out of fruit. Like we used to, make spears out of wood to stab like monsters bigger than us, right? And it conveys the same meaning.
Hell yeah.
I don't think.
I don't know. If it's a big part of your cultural heritage that makes, especially if it makes you like distinct from other like civilizations that grew on planet Earth.
Sure.
Like if our people made spears this certain way and it's like really distinct and maybe we were ahead of our time because we had used this shape that nobody else used or something like that. Like the difference between, like people are really into swords and shit. The shapes between like a shotel and a falchion and a fucking saber and all that stuff. It's the things that make them distinct. It's not just like, this is how we made it. We have to remember that forever. But also part of that. It's like, this is what
I think it's interesting for the people that want to get interested in that, but I don't think we should have like a day at school where we teach, the kids like, here are the 800 types of swords that we've made historically. Like, I don't think it meaningfully changes a lot of things, and there's only so many things that you can continue to choose to pass on.
Yeah, I don't think we should teach everybody about every little thing. Yeah. Like, I feel like I've been pretty clear from the very beginning.
Yeah. So I guess I don't know what we're differing on. Like, if there's things that we want to continue to remember that we think are quintessential, then sure, that's fine. But I don't necessarily think that
you guys are getting into it's the difference in debate is that like Rage Hope, you're very much focused on like the function of a particular thing. Like you should like learn and pass on techniques that even today like stand the test of time. Whereas the things that Supreme are talking about are more like these kind of like these semantic understanding and memories of cultures and these kind of like subjective experiences that even if they're not super relevant today, kind of connect you to like the culture of the past. Maybe there's a better way to make a certain thing, but like the act of folding a piece of paper or the crinkle that something makes in a certain way kind of like invokes like a past memory or spirit that's uniquely connecting you to like your culture of the past, basically, that he sees a value in that and you don't, which is fine. I'm not saying one is good or bad.
Yeah.
Or that people see value in this, and I think it's okay to like set aside some resources to like.
Yeah, I think that's fine. If people want to set resources, if we come together as a society and say we want something done, there's always going to be dissenters, and it doesn't really matter. If we decide as a society, then that's what we should do.
Very laissez-faire attitude.
True. Yeah.
All right, we managed to turn a conversation about like art into one about consent at one point, and now it's on like underwater basket weaving, I guess.
Yeah, so when are we having that minimum wage debate that you've been trying to push for and now backing out of?
Ooh.
When you do the face reveal.
Ooh.
When I quit my job.
Ooh, yikes.